They were like people I had never seen before. "Congrats on marrying my brother. Your dress is cute, but don't you think mine looks better?" my sister-in-law said. "Oh, saying that will make the bride feel bad," she continued, pretending to joke. It was supposed to be my happiest day, but in the bridal dressing room, I was left speechless by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law's rude comments. They spoke with an arrogant tone, and I was shocked. My sister-in-law's outfit was unbelievable. She wore a dress so white it could compete with any bride's dress. It had a slit showing off her legs, and she wrapped fur around her off-the-shoulder top. My mother-in-law looked at her daughter with admiration, while my husband stared at his family coldly. I never thought I'd be treated so badly on my wedding day. It was too much to handle. Looking back, it's no wonder my sister-in-law's matchmaking efforts ended in failure with behavior like that, even at someone else's wedding. My name is Anaya. I was born in a coastal town and grew up in a regular family. When I went to a state university, I stayed with my maternal grandmother, who lived nearby. Living with grandma, who had always pampered me, was a dream come true. Her well-kept house had a mix of Western and traditional styles, and it had a warm, nostalgic atmosphere. I loved sitting on the balcony, overlooking the small garden, chatting with grandma while eating seasonal fruits. Even after I got a job, I stayed there. When grandma got sick, I took care of the house, hoping she'd come back, but that wish never came true. When she could no longer live on her own, she moved to a care home in my hometown. "I want to take care of grandma," I said, but she smiled and told me, "You've done enough, Anaya. I want you to find happiness." After grandma passed away, I married Jesse, who had always been there for me. Now we live in the house filled with grandma's memories. But what should have been a peaceful newlywed life is constantly interrupted by those two women. "How did someone as plain looking and skinny as you marry my brother?" my sister-in-law once asked me. One day, my mother-in-law asked me to make lunch for my sister-in-law while she went to a neighborhood meeting. Instead of being thankful, my sister-in-law greeted me with sarcasm. I wanted to leave, but I knew they would just come to my house if I did. "Ask your brother," my sister-in-law said, satisfied with her own conclusion. "Well, maybe you two are a good match since he's not that great either." She then gulped down the curry I made. She probably thinks that eating small bites in front of men makes her more attractive. My sister-in-law may seem mean, but what's truly scary is that she doesn't even realize how rude she is. She looks down on everyone, including me and her own brother, without a second thought. It's exhausting. My mother-in-law, who raised her, is no better. Instead of disliking me, my mother-in-law focuses on making her daughter look good by criticizing me and ordering me around. That's why she calls me for these kinds of tasks. If I ignored my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law would either call me nonstop or ring my doorbell endlessly. It was like living in a nightmare. My mother-in-law always said her daughter was the most important person in her life and never really cared about her son. My husband insists he was never mistreated, but he also says he was never given much attention. His father went on a work trip 10 years ago and never came back. Even after retiring, he still sends money for living expenses, so it seems neither my mother-in-law nor sister-in-law care about him. My husband tries to talk to them about their behavior, but they never listen. To them, he's just someone else to look down on. Watching my husband suffer hurt more than my own struggles, and I often gave in to my mother-in-law's demands, which was a mistake. As a result, both of them became more unbearable, and the stress began to affect our marriage. We knew we couldn't continue like this. Determined, my husband and I decided to come up with a plan. Just as we were about to put it into action, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed up unexpectedly at our house on a hot summer day. My husband was at work, so I reluctantly greeted them. "Hello, sister-in-law. What brings you here?" I asked. "Just because we're your cute sister-in-law and mother-in-law doesn't mean we need a reason to visit. You should fix that stingy attitude. It's hot outside. Let us in." "You're so inconsiderate," she replied. I really didn't want to let them into grandma's house, but to avoid a scene, I had no choice. I served them coffee and some cookies I had baked the day before. "No cake?" they asked. "I'm sorry, you came unexpectedly," I explained. "Well, it's okay. Your cooking is decent, even if a bit plain," they said. I was surprised to hear them compliment me, but it felt more unsettling than pleasant. "The house is old, but it's spacious. It's passable," they remarked. To me, grandma's house was perfect. Then, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law announced, my sister-in-law, is getting married." I was stunned for a moment, but considering how she always bragged about her body and bold approach with men, it wasn't entirely shocking. It seemed to work on gullible guys or those looking for some fun. Is it the guy you had an affair with? I asked, remembering a man she once mentioned. It wasn't an affair, we just met at the wrong time. It's true love, she said, trying to justify it. But no, not him. The one who recently approached you, I continued. I just noticed him staring at me and went up to him first. But no, not him either, she replied. Then who? I asked. Elle met him at a speed dating event. He's the son of a wealthy man, my mother-in-law announced proudly. That's right. I'm having a shotgun wedding with a rich guy. Good for me. Unlike your brother who married someone like you, my sister-in-law said with a smirk, adding that she was already pregnant. She didn't miss the chance to insult me. The speed dating event had been about 3 months ago, and she likely charmed an unsuspecting man. I felt sorry for him and his family. Did you break up with the other guys? I asked. Not yet. They all love me so much. I can't bear to tell them, she said smugly, but it's inevitable. I'm just too lovable, she boasted. What really drove her, though, was money. I had a feeling this was the case, but I still wondered if the child was even from that wealthy man. Then they revealed their true motive. We want to use this house for the pre-wedding family introduction. I was so disgusted that I immediately said, no way. They glared at me, and to avoid an argument, I tried to smooth things over. I think the groom's family would want to see the bride's real home. Besides, our place is small and a bit messy, I explained. Then clean it up and stop smoking inside, my sister-in-law snapped. But won't they find it strange to come to the bride's brother's house? I asked. You're not getting it, she replied. We'll just say, this is my family's home. What if they find out the truth? I pushed. As long as you and your husband stay quiet, it'll be fine. Once we're married, he's mine, and I'm pregnant, so it's not that simple, she said. Why don't you just make this house belong to mom and dad? She suggested. Her outrageous idea left me speechless. Oh, what a great idea. This house is old, but we'll take it, she added. This is my grandma's house. It's not just my decision, I said, shocked. Don't you know? Once you're married, everything belongs to the husband's family, my sister-in-law retorted. I've never heard of such a rule, I replied, confused. Well, learn it now. What's yours is ours, she said confidently. So next Sunday, we'll bring the fiancé and his family. Oh, and make a fancy meal. We'll tell them Elle made it, and change the curtains to match Elle's style, she added. They left after dumping all their demands on me, leaving me seething with anger and a pile of dirty dishes. That night, my husband, feeling guilty, said, I'm sorry, we won't let them use the house. Of course not, but even if we refuse, they'll just show up anyway. Maybe we should move up our plan, I suggested. I could handle them bullying me, but I couldn't stand them disrespecting grandma's house. We'll get back at them for everything, so brace yourself, my husband said, determined. The next day, I made several phone calls. Despite the last-minute change, everyone was understanding, and I felt grateful. Once everything was set, I called my mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, I want Elle's wedding to be a success. Can we have a bit more time? We're thinking of remodeling the house to make it more suitable for the couple, I said, playing along. Anaya, I misunderstood you. You're such a good person, she said, thinking I was on their side. But we have wedding preparations to deal with, she added, still focused on their plans. Please hurry up, my mother-in-law said. I understand. We'll be ready in 3 weeks. In the meantime, why don't you start looking for a wedding venue? I suggested. You're so thoughtful, it's almost scary. But yes, we'll leave the introduction to you and focus on the wedding, she replied. It felt like our first pleasant conversation, and probably the last. They had no idea what was coming and wouldn't visit the house until the big day. My husband and I had a tight deadline, but we worked non-stop, even sacrificing sleep. We knew it was for our future. 3 weeks later, the day my mother-in-law had set for the family introduction finally arrived. My husband and I anxiously waited for her call. I could already imagine the fury on her face. At exactly 10 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Anaya, what have you done? She screamed, her voice hysterical. I thought you'd appreciate it. I prepared the perfect vacant land and a meal for you and Elle. I calmly replied. What have you done? She screamed again, but her words were hard to understand. The place where she had taken her fiancé's family, claiming it was her home, was no longer grandma's house. I had arranged for a new home and meal, but they clearly weren't happy. I realized my mother-in-law wanted me to explain what was going on. I responded sweetly. I'm sorry if I upset you. Could you put me on speaker so the groom's mother can hear? The shouting stopped, and a polite voice came on the line. Are you Aaron's mother? I asked. It seems there's been some misunderstanding. I pretended to confuse the groom with several men my sister-in-law had been involved with. Oh, is it Ivan or Phil? I listed more names. Anaya, stop it. My mother-in-law shrieked louder than ever before. Then the call abruptly ended. I could imagine them in the middle of a huge argument. That felt good, I said with a smile. My husband, who had listened to the whole conversation, looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry for making you do that. I should have handled it, he said. No, remember I told you I wanted to get back at them for what they did to Grandma's house. I reminded him. Grandma always wanted me to be happy. I love that house, but you are more important to me. In truth, my mother, Grandma's heir, had already planned to demolish the house. It wasn't earthquake resistant, and maintaining such an old place was difficult. I had insisted on staying because I loved it, but after dealing with my in-laws, I changed my mind. I didn't want them to ruin Grandma's house, but I also didn't want to leave my husband. So, I decided to say goodbye to the house with fond memories. That's why I asked my husband to find a new job, and we prepared to move back to my hometown. We just sped up our plans. I had Grandma's house demolished and built a small dog house in the middle of the vacant lot, with a tag that read L. It was designed like a log cabin, and we even went slightly over budget for it. I filled a small dish with the most expensive dog food from the pet store. Everything was set. Grandma liked you. She wouldn't want us to break up because of that house. Anaya, I promise I won't waste this chance you've given me, my husband said earnestly. I made the decision because I believed in him. A year and a half has passed since then. After we moved to my hometown, my husband, who was initially a bit unsure about the tough fisherman neighbors, is now more loved by them than I am. The coastal town's breeze and seafood-rich dishes seem to suit him well. His once pale complexion has completely changed. Seeing him happily enjoy grilled salmon for dinner fills me with peace and contentment. Did you get any emails today? I asked one evening. No, nothing recently. They're probably too busy, he replied. We haven't been in touch with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law since the incident. My husband's phone is the only connection we have with them. We later heard about the doghouse fiasco from a neighbor who had been close to Grandma. Apparently, when my mother-in-law and sister-in-law brought the fiancé's family to see what they claimed was their home, they found nothing but the demolished lot with the little doghouse and a dish filled with expensive dog food. The luxurious smell from the food must have added to their embarrassment. The two were furious, accusing me of harassing them, but that wasn't the worst part. After hearing hints about my sister-in-law's questionable taste in men during a phone call, the fiancé's family confronted her. She couldn't give them any clear answers, so they hired a private detective. The investigation revealed all of her lies and past relationships. This led to a DNA test for the unborn child, and it was confirmed that the baby wasn't the wealthy man's. Naturally, the engagement was called off. The baby's real father turned out to be another man she had been seeing. Luckily for her, he was thrilled to have a child with her, and the two ended up getting married. However, the man's mother, who adored her son, wasn't happy about him marrying an older woman with a questionable past. Furious, she insisted that they live together. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, upset that her daughter had been taken, rented an apartment near the newlyweds, and the two mothers seemed to clash daily. Sister-in-law, who had dreamed of marrying rich and living a luxurious life, now seems worn out. She's constantly bullied by her mother-in-law and has to juggle household chores and childcare. But there is a bright side, her husband adores their baby, so it's really up to them to manage their life. One day, my husband's phone rings. Oh, it's an invitation for drinks from my dad, he says. His father has really warmed up to him. I enjoy his stories, and my mother-in-law always prepares my favorite dishes, he added. I realize now that my own mother never cared about my favorite things. This is what family feels like, he murmured. I reassured him. Don't worry, you'll be the kind of parent who knows all their child's favorites. As I gently rubbed my growing belly, he smiled warmly. I feel like we can make that happen in this home, he said, looking up at the beautiful caramel-colored beam on the ceiling. That beam came from Grandma's house when we demolished it, and we had it incorporated into our new home as a reminder of her. It was my husband's idea to keep the beam, while I had just wanted to tear everything down. That's why I chose a future with him. Let's make this house as wonderful as Grandma's, I said. Yes, absolutely, he agreed. In our small house, in this peaceful coastal town where you can hear the sound of the waves, we are building our happiness.
You should get a divorce immediately. When we tested your daughter, I have to tell you this as a friend." After saying that, Paul revealed something shocking. His words left me stunned and unable to hide my agitation.
"What? What do you mean?"
Paul is a pediatrician. We are at his hospital, but this isn't an examination room, just a private room. It seems to be a place where unused equipment is stored. Paul brought me here and strongly suggested I get a divorce. But more than that, he revealed an astonishing fact about my daughter, Kate. Listening in disbelief, I saw Paul steady his expression as if he had made up his mind.
"This might be hard for you to hear, Rebecca, but please stay calm and listen."
Later, I filed for divorce as Paul advised. Due to a conflict with Tom at that time, I had to hastily move out. But perhaps it was a necessary step for a new beginning. My name is Rebecca. I live with my husband, Tom, and my daughter, Kate. In reality, Kate and I are not related by blood. She is the child of Tom and his ex-wife. I met Tom through a friend when I was 29 and he was 33. We bonded over our shared love for movies and food and eventually got married. People around me warned that marrying someone with a child would be tough, but I accepted it with determination. Due to a gynecological condition, I am unable to have children. I thought having a child would only ever be a dream, but Kate, a sweet girl, became my daughter. I was overjoyed. When we got married, Kate was only 3 years old and had little memory of her biological mother. His ex-wife passed away due to complications after childbirth. So, Kate treated me like her real mother and grew attached to me. While I felt happiness, I also felt a sense of guilt towards her late mother, so we all visit her grave every year. During these visits, Kate always says, "I'm so lucky to have 2 moms."
Kate.
Kate is kind and very sweet. I always held her little hand, determined to make her happy. This year marks our 5th visit to the grave. Kate is now 8 years old. As usual, we offered our prayers together.
"Hey! Hurry up! Let's go!"
Tom called out from a distance. Though he was visiting his late wife's grave, Tom quickly paid his respects and was ready to leave. Over the past few years, I've started to feel that Tom's behavior was a bit cold. If I didn't prompt him, he wouldn't even think of visiting the grave, which made me feel increasingly uncomfortable. I wondered if it was because he was a man, but even so, it seemed too cold. Tom was still kind to me, which made the disparity even more noticeable. After getting married, I realized Tom tended to neglect Kate. He works in pharmaceutical research and is always busy. It seems he left all the child rearing to his ex-wife and didn't know much about Kate. Even at the beginning of our marriage, we had exchanges like this.
"Where are Kate's health records?"
Health records? Where could they be?
"Do we need them?"
Of course! They contain important information about her birth and vaccinations. Tom had no sense of responsibility as a parent. I eventually found the health records after a lot of searching, only to discover that more than half of the vaccinations she needed by age 3 had not been done. Panicked, I took her to get the shots. Vaccinations are indeed a moral obligation, but Tom simply prioritized work and forgot about them, which was exasperating. It was unbelievable that someone working in a pharmaceutical company could be so indifferent about these things. I couldn't trust Tom with Kate's care, so I took the primary role in looking after her. Taking care of sweet Kate wasn't a burden, it was a joy. However, when I realized that young Kate didn't feel her father's love, my heart broke.
"Dad, he doesn't like me?"
That's not true, Kate. Dad is just busy with work. He cares about you a lot.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Mom.
Sweet Kate. Just hearing her call me Mom makes me so happy. But when Kate turned 10, Tom started to change a little. He offered to help with dinner. For me, who had started working part-time again, his offer was a relief. Maybe Tom finally felt he needed to do something as a father and husband. Although I thought it was a bit late, I decided to accept his offer.
Thanks, Tom. Can I leave it to you on your days off?
Yeah, of course. Looking forward to it.
I expect great things.
Tom, who had lived alone during his single days, was indeed a good cook. My burden was lightened, and my distrust towards Tom eased. I felt reassured that Tom also valued our family. But despite spending more meal times together as a family, Kate's mood started to change. Usually, everything was fine, but sometimes she would get upset and take it out on me. At first, I didn't understand why. Her teacher said there were no changes in her behavior, and she played happily with her friends. She had no complaints about her extracurricular activities or tutoring. But after observing her for a while, I figured it out. Kate sometimes felt unwell. That was why she was in a bad mood. She would have stomach issues and lock herself in the bathroom, struggle to wake up in the morning, or occasionally stay awake because she couldn't sleep. These bouts of illness happened about once every 3 months, and I thought she should get checked, so I consulted Tom.
But it's not the same sickness each time, right? It's just occasional bad days.
Well, that's true, but if she gets better quickly, it's not an illness. Don't worry. Rebecca, you worry too much. Tom didn't seem to take it seriously, and I began to think I was overthinking it. Indeed, it wasn't a constant issue, and the symptoms were varied. Even when I took her to the hospital, they said it was stress-related and prescribed some medicine. But I'm going to bed.
What? It's only 7 p.m.
I'm really sleepy. Good night. Kate rubbed her eyes and went to her room without taking a shower. Tom, who was doing the dishes, said, "Going to bed early and waking up early is a good thing." "Good night," he responded cheerfully. Didn't he think it was strange that she wanted to sleep 2 hours earlier than usual? I thought it might be pointless to consult Tom. The next day, I decided to take Kate to a different hospital. Kate, who looked exhausted, and I walked into the examination room together. I was surprised to see someone I didn't expect.
Paul? Right. You changed your name after getting married. Long time no see.
Paul, looking at the medical records, smiled. Paul, who went to the same high school as me, had become a pediatrician and worked at this hospital. I never thought I'd meet an acquaintance here. Paul, who was kind and secretly popular in our class, was still gentle and calm. Feeling reassured by the unchanged Paul, I reported Kate's recent symptoms. Her body doesn't show any particular signs of illness, but would you like to run some tests?
Yes, please.
Hearing this, Kate, who was sitting next to me, said, "Tests?" with an unhappy look on her face.
Don't be upset. It's important to check your health, Kate.
Okay. Good girl. Although she was almost 11, she was still just a child. Kate smiled innocently at my words. Paul also smiled at our interaction.
You know, you two really look alike when you're together.
What?
You're like 2 peas in a pod.
Hearing that, Kate and I exchanged glances. Even though we're not related by blood, we've grown to resemble each other as a family. It filled me with a warm feeling. Both Kate and I felt glad we came to the hospital today. The tests were over, and we were told to come back for the results later. Paul, at the end, said,
If any symptoms bother you again, please come back.
That made me feel reassured. However, in the end, the test results showed no abnormalities. Even after that, whenever Kate felt unwell, we would go to this hospital. Each time, Paul would conduct tests, and each time, the cause would remain unknown. Paul's expression grew more concerned with each visit.
A child feeling unwell once every few months isn't unusual. Doing tests each time seems like a hospital scam, don't you think? But what if something's really wrong with Kate?
I don't know, Rebecca.
I think you're an easy target for these doctors.
Hearing such insulting words about Paul made me furious. But I held back because I never wanted to argue with my husband in front of Kate. Seeing parents fight is one of the most distressing things for a child. Days passed dealing with occasional unexplained illnesses. Kate had turned 12 before we knew it. After a year of finding nothing, I started to think it was just common health issues during growth. One day, we went to the hospital as usual to hear the test results. While waiting in the lounge, Paul came over to me. He asked me to follow him and led us to a private room. It was a bit cluttered, seemingly used for storage most of the time.
For about a year, we've done 5 tests in total.
Yes.
Did you find something in Kate's test this time?
Calm down, Rebecca. Paul, with an unusually stern face, faced my anxious look. Then, with a serious expression, he said,
I think I know you quite well, Rebecca. You're an honest and kind person, not good at lying. Why are you saying this all of a sudden, Paul? Rebecca, this is advice from a friend.
Paul said something unbelievable.
You need to divorce your husband immediately. Something terrible has been discovered through Kate's tests. What do you mean?
I was shocked by the word divorce, but the mention of Kate heightened my anxiety. Paul, with a serious look, continued.
You need to separate Kate from him right away, or something irreparable might happen.
That's why I want you to consider divorce or at least separation to keep her away from him. Irreparable? What does that even mean? Paul quickly explained.
The first time you came here, we did a test. It revealed the presence of sleeping pills in Kate's body. What? Sleeping pills? Has Kate ever used sleeping pills or sleep aids?
I shook my head at Paul's question. Paul, after a moment of contemplation, spoke again.
This might be hard for you to hear, Rebecca, but I need you to stay calm.
Paul explained that with each test, some form of medication was detected in Kate's system. Sometimes it was a laxative, sometimes painkillers, and sometimes sleeping pills. It seemed likely that over-the-counter drugs were given by a family member, but the medical forms didn't indicate any medication. According to my accounts, we came to the hospital suddenly due to her symptoms, and there was no report of giving her any drugs beforehand. Furthermore, she showed symptoms like diarrhea when laxative components were found, and fatigue and sleepiness when sleeping pills were detected, clearly indicating drug-induced. This led to suspicions that Kate was being given medication by one of her parents, causing her to feel unwell. Naturally, I was also under suspicion. However, to continue the investigation without alerting me, the detection of the drug's components was kept hidden from me as well. Then, in the 5th test, it was confirmed once again that Kate was indeed being given some kind of medication regularly. Upon receiving these results, Paul decided to take personal action. It was a risky move for a doctor, but it showed how much he trusted me.
Isn't Rebecca's current husband working for a pharmaceutical company? Huh? How did you know that? Sorry, I checked your health insurance card. The pharmaceutical company where he works has had a bad reputation with the medical community for a while.
I had a bad feeling about it. I felt a chill run down my spine.
Do you think Tom could be giving something to Kate? I can't rule out the possibility. Kate tends to come over on Mondays or after holidays. Is there anything different about those days?
Something different.
When he said that, I realized something. On holidays, Tom always cooks dinner. Our kitchen is not easily visible from the living room, so it's possible he could be doing something without us noticing. Paul's words and my growing suspicion towards Tom were becoming more and more believable. It couldn't be his own child. But seeing his behavior during visits to his ex-wife's grave and his indifference towards Kate until recently, I couldn't completely dismiss the possibility. Balancing my desire to trust Tom and my need to protect Kate, it was obvious which side the scales would tip towards. I wanted to protect Kate. Determined, I looked Paul straight in the eyes. I couldn't ignore this issue. A few days later, I immediately purchased a child surveillance camera online. I decided to use it to monitor Tom's actions in the kitchen. I camouflaged it with a box to avoid detection by Tom. Honestly, I had hoped it wouldn't capture anything suspicious. My feelings for Tom hadn't changed, and I wanted to believe he wouldn't do such a thing to his own daughter. But that hope was shattered a month later. One night, Kate experienced some abnormal symptoms. She had an upset stomach and kept running to the bathroom. Sensing something was wrong, I quickly checked the surveillance camera. What I saw was horrifying. Tom, preparing dinner as usual on the weekend. Taking something out of his pants pocket when he thought we weren't looking. A small bottle containing some kind of powder. He put it into one of the dishes. It was Kate's special soup bowl. Mixing the powder into the soup, his expression was not clearly visible from the camera. A mix of disbelief and anger surged through me. How could he give Kate something harmful? After saving the video, I went to the freezer. Since Tom cooked, we had been freezing Kate's leftovers. Frozen packs of Kate's soup. The remnants of that powder should be there. I made sure to push it further back to avoid Tom finding it. This was advice from Paul. Video alone would only be circumstantial evidence, so physical evidence was also needed. I calmed myself and prepared a glass of water for Kate, who had just come out of the bathroom. "Are you okay, Kate?" "Yeah. This happened before, right? Maybe my stomach is just sensitive."
Yeah. Maybe.
Kate, looking exhausted and drinking the water, seemed in pain. I didn't want to hurt Kate by letting her think it was her own body's fault. I firmly vowed to protect her from harm, even if it was her own father. I gathered all the evidence and prepared to confront Tom. On Saturday, as soon as Kate went out to meet her friends as planned, I seized the moment to speak to Tom. "What? You said you had something important to talk about. Before that?" I questioned Tom, who was sitting on the sofa with his usual expression. "Tom, are you hiding something from me?" "Not just from me, but from Kate too." "Hiding something? What do you mean?" For a moment, Tom's eyes flickered. I didn't miss that and said, "Take a look at this." Pulling out my smartphone. I had recorded the footage on my smartphone. The screen showed Tom putting something into a powder. Tom was shocked when he saw it, and I spoke in a firm tone. "What is this? What are you giving to Kate?" "It's a misunderstanding. This is a supplement. A sample from my workplace." I had anticipated such an excuse. But to say it so smoothly. He must have been thinking about how to get away with it even if he was found out. Clenching my teeth, I said, "Lies won't work. I've already had that meal preserved and analyzed." "Preserved? Rebecca, what are you doing?" "A laxative was found." "Tom, are you giving laxatives to a child as a supplement?"
That is.
Tom's eyes darted even more. Feeling anger towards Tom for trying to lie, I said mercilessly, "Excuses won't work.
We've been finding substances in Kate's tests at the hospital. What? Rebecca, you said the tests were clear. That's why So you continued mixing the drugs?
Tom fell silent at my loud voice. That silence was like admitting to it. I wasn't lying when I said the tests were clear, because that's what I was told. Maybe I should be grateful to Paul for this. Thanks to him, I could face Tom without any hesitation, even though I'm not good at lying. I asked Tom the most important question. Why are you doing this? What do you gain from it? Knowing he couldn't talk his way out of it anymore. Tom took a deep breath and said something unbelievable. You're exaggerating, Rebecca. I just did a little experiment on Kate. What? An experiment? What I gave to Kate was a trial product my company is developing. It's like a clinical trial. I couldn't understand what Tom was saying. He didn't even look apologetic, so he might not think he did anything wrong. My face turned pale. You were giving that to Kate? Calling it that is rude. It's a new drug packed with our latest technology. It's a good thing to give it to her. A good thing! I pounded the table in frustration. You gave her laxatives and caused diarrhea even though she wasn't constipated, gave her sleeping pills and disrupted her routine. And you call that a good thing? Calm down. This is a necessary human experiment.
Human experiment.
Tom's laughter scared me. Maybe I was dealing with a truly dangerous person. A feeling of fear welled up. But I had to be brave. If I lost here, Kate would be in danger.
An experiment? You just said you did an experiment on our daughter.
That's right. It's hard to tell how much works with just animals. We could recruit for clinical trials. But that's expensive and time-consuming. With my own daughter, I can monitor her regularly and there's no added responsibility. It's an easy and cheap method, right? My body was trembling. It wasn't from fear. I was shaking with anger. I couldn't believe that Kate had suffered so much because of this. Don't be ridiculous. Tom, you aren't even a parent. You aren't even human. That's too much, Rebecca. The Tom standing in front of me no longer looked like a person. He reached out to me with a sickly sweet voice. I love you, Rebecca. That's why I never gave it to you. You knew it was dangerous, so you didn't give it to me? Then why did you give it to Kate? Because Kate is my daughter. It's only natural for a daughter to help her father with his experiments. His words were treating our child as his property. This man isn't a father. He's not even human. There's no point in saying anything more. I handed Tom the papers I had been hiding. This is pointless. Let's get a divorce. A divorce? Of course, I'll be taking Kate. With all this evidence, there's no way you'll get custody. And you just gave another damning statement. I showed him the divorce papers along with a hidden voice recorder. When I pressed play, Tom's horrible words filled the room again. I stopped it quickly, not wanting to hear more than necessary, and for the first time, Tom looked shaken. No! I don't want a divorce. Now he doesn't want a divorce? I looked at Tom with cold eyes. I've already signed my part, now you sign it too. But I love you, Rebecca. I don't love you anymore. I said it firmly. There's no love left for Tom, who has only hurt Kate. It will be hard for Kate from now on. But I can't leave her with someone who talks about human experiments. No, Rebecca. Don't cry. Just sign it. As Tom started crying, I felt my emotions growing colder. Tom had loved me before and after our marriage.
But his love was twisted. I can't accept such love. After Tom signed, I took the divorce papers and left the house. I drove straight to the courthouse. Just as I was about to submit the papers.
No! I can't! I won't let you! Tom!
Tom arrived the moment I handed out the paper. Tom had followed me, probably in his car. He was completely mentally broken, ignoring the stares of others. He clung to my shoulder.
Let's try again! I'll never do anything like that again! Stop it, Tom!
With so many people watching, I was flustered. The courthouse staff just observed us. Maybe they see family drama like this often. But when Tom tried to forcefully pull me away, someone finally intervened. That person was
Kate. What are you doing here?
It was our daughter, Kate, the victim in this whole ordeal. She stepped between us and leaned towards me. I thought this might happen, so I came here first. It's okay. I'm ready for this.
Kate!
I was surprised by her sudden support. I had told Kate everything beforehand. The hospital results. The cause of her health problems. And everything Tom had done. It was hard to tell her the truth, but she deserved to know. When Kate learned everything, she was shocked but also seemed to understand. So that's why I felt sick only when Dad cooked.
Kate, did you know?
Yeah. I'm not a little kid anymore. It's astonishing how children grow up so fast. Come to think of it, she'll be in middle school next year. She had grown up so much, my daughter. Feeling a bit emotional, I told Kate that Tom and I would be having a serious talk soon. I also mentioned that divorce might be a possibility. Although I hadn't told her today was the day, smart Kate had figured it out. Perhaps her excuse about meeting a friend was a lie. She must have left the house early and waited at this courthouse.
Kate! Convince Mom not to do something stupid.
Still thinking Kate knew nothing, Tom said that. However, Kate's sharp gaze made Tom's shoulder twitch.
Dad, I know everything. That's why I can't be with you anymore.
Kate.
A dad who gives his daughter strange drugs is scary.
As soon as Kate said that firmly and loudly, the atmosphere in the courthouse changed. There was a stir, and the looks from those around us became harsh.
Didn't that girl just say she was given drugs?
By that father? Isn't that serious?
The murmurs of the people reached Tom's ears, making him turn pale. And then,
"Excuse me. Can we have a word?" "Huh? The police?"
A police officer who happened to be there approached us. The officer grabbed Tom's arm as he tried to escape.
"I've been concerned since earlier. Her comment really caught my attention. I'm sorry, but could you and your daughter come with me too?"
Yes. Things were escalating quickly. But perhaps this was a good turn of events. With his arm still held by the officer, Tom's face turned even paler.
"I didn't do anything." "We'll hear more at the station, so let's go."
Okay.
With the stern officer glaring at him, even Tom couldn't resist. He silently began to walk beside the officer. Once quiet, Tom was put into a different police car from us and taken to an interrogation room. Kate and I spoke with another officer and submitted evidence. The hospital was also contacted, and Paul cooperated with his testimony. It became increasingly difficult for Tom to escape the situation. Tom was eventually arrested. The interrogation took several days. During that time, I made sure to submit the divorce papers again. I was relieved to gain custody smoothly. Tom had done something truly unforgivable. The moving process was also done hastily. I decided to move to a place Tom wouldn't know while he was still detained. Luckily, there was an available apartment near Kate's school, so I signed the lease. But staying so close might mean Tom could find us once released. I still had that worry. What if Tom barges in again? However, such worries turned out to be unnecessary. Tom wasn't just detained, he was indicted. The reason was Tom's job at a pharmaceutical company. During the interrogation, questioning about drug management and experiment data revealed the company's overall misconduct. Poor drug management, falsified experimental data, and a different manufacturing process than reported to the authorities. All these were extremely malicious, and what seemed like a family issue turned out to have nationwide implications. The police took this seriously and changed the way they handled the case. Tom, holding an important position in the company, was seen as highly responsible and was indicted. The scandal at a major pharmaceutical company became big news and was sensationally covered by the media for a while. I could only watch in stunned silence. In the end, Tom was fined and sentenced to 2 years in prison. I felt genuinely relieved that I had divorced him before it came to this point. If Paul hadn't urged me to get a divorce back then, our family might have been stigmatized for having a criminal in the family. I feel bad for Tom, but I didn't want to be involved. I can't thank Paul enough for his advice. I felt relieved, but there was one problem. Our household income suddenly dropped. Regrettably, our family had been relying on Tom's high income. I'm taking him to court to ensure he pays child support, but I never know when he might stop paying. I also looked for a full-time job, but it was hard to find one quickly. We were facing financial hardship. Just when I was feeling hopeless about our financial future, I got a call from an unexpected person. It was from Tom's mother, my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, Sarah, lives alone far away. She's always been a rather cold person who doesn't involve herself much in her son's family affairs. When I attended family meetings as Tom's second wife, she never seemed very interested. I don't really know much about what kind of person Sarah is. Sarah spoke calmly on the phone. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm really sorry Tom did that."
No, it's...
Even though I did it to protect Kate, I knew that I had been the one to push Tom into a corner. I was prepared to be blamed by Sarah, Tom's mother. But Sarah didn't seem to have any intention of blaming me. I should have opposed his second marriage. I was worried about Kate and thought it would be good for her to have a mother. But I'm done with Tom. Then, Sarah offered to give Kate a living inheritance. I was surprised by her sudden offer. "Are you sure, Sarah?" "It's fine. I've already saved for my old age, and I was thinking of leaving the rest of my estate to my only son, Tom, but now..." Sarah spoke with a hint of sadness in her voice, explaining that she had been receiving frequent letters from Tom in prison. I thought they might be letters of affection for his mother, but they weren't. They were demands for money and requests for job placements. I was thoroughly disgusted with Tom, burdening his mother even in her old age. He would just waste it if I gave it to him. I'd rather give it to my granddaughter, Kate. Sarah. I realized I had misunderstood Sarah. She seemed uninterested, but she genuinely cared. "Of course, we'll keep this a secret from Tom. I'll tell him I used it all myself. Thank you so much, Sarah." I thanked her repeatedly. Of course, I couldn't rely solely on this inheritance. I eventually found a full-time job and started anew. Apparently, after Tom was released, he tried to find Sarah, but she had already moved into a nursing home, so he couldn't locate her. No wonder. I was the one who arranged her admission. We also moved for the second time when Kate started middle school. Everyone in town knew about the court troubles, so we decided to move far away. Kate was happy to move and start fresh in middle school. Now, Tom has no idea where either his parent or his wife and daughter are. It seems sad that he has been abandoned by both, but it's his own fault for trying to conduct inhumane experiments on his daughter. People who don't value their family won't be valued by them. It's as simple as that. Tom had to learn this lesson the hard way. And as the years passed, Kate turned 18. Kate had grown into a young woman and had already surpassed my height. Today, Kate is leaving home. Kate, who is heading to college in Boston, is about to start living on her own. Worried, I kept giving her advice at the door before she left. Kate gave me a wry smile.
I'm going to be fine. Mom, you should focus on your own happiness.
She leaned in close as if sharing a secret.
I gave Paul a little nudge to ask you out. What? I trust him with you, Mom. Bye now.
Kate laughed, waved, and walked out the door. Actually, since then, Paul has been looking out for us in many ways. Sometimes he takes us out for meals or gives us gifts. I was taken aback. Kate really has grown up. No, she's already 18. An adult. Her thoughtful words about caring for me made me happy. My sweet, considerate Kate. The memories of the time spent with my beloved daughter are enough to make me feel fulfilled. Feeling content, I looked up at the sky from the doorway. There, the clear blue sky stretched out endlessly. Before moving to this neighborhood, I thought it was just a regular residential area. But it turns out, this place is really active with community events. As a result, interactions with neighbors have become frequent, and now almost everyone is familiar with each other to the point where an unknown person loitering around raises suspicions. Plus, everyone's really conscious about security. Every 6 months, there's a safety meeting where adults and kids from around the area participate, attending lectures on prevention and presenting research findings. The first time I attended, I was surprised by how informative it was, but everything I learned has been useful in daily life. That's why I'm very careful with key management and always check the doors with my son before we leave the house. But sometimes, when I come back home, I feel like the atmosphere or the vibe is different, as if something's off. It's not like there's a lingering scent, but just a feeling of discomfort. My son Keith has also mentioned in secret that he feels like someone has been in his room. The only one in our family who seems completely oblivious to these vibes is my husband Tanner.
Really? I don't get that vibe at all.
He says with a dismissive laugh, making me regret even mentioning it. Tanner works in the general affairs department of a trading company and has started working from home 3 days a week, according to the company's policy. I work at a shop, so I have to go to work every day. Keith is also out most of the time with school, clubs, and tutoring. So, I thought if Tanner doesn't feel anything, then it must be nothing, but then I had a realization that made me completely distrust his words. Because of the strong community ties here, neighborly interactions are quite deep. I've gotten to the point where I occasionally have tea with my neighbor Virginia, inviting each other over to our houses. One day, after coming back from work, she caught me and invited me to her house with a serious look on her face. This was unusual, so I was a bit curious but went over. Tanner is working from home these days, right? She asked seriously. When I confirmed, Virginia awkwardly started. I was planning to distribute some flyers to your house today. But I was in the middle of hanging laundry and couldn't step away, so I asked my son to do it, Virginia said. Her son, a college student, happened to be home for spring break. He's always cooped up at home playing video games, so I thought it'd be good for him to get out. I had to push him a bit, but he reluctantly agreed to deliver the flyers and also grab some toilet paper from the supermarket on the way. I watched him go to your house and ring the doorbell, just observing from the balcony while I hung the laundry. The rule I mentioned is about handing out flyers directly whenever possible, which is unique to our area. It seems that increasing face-to-face interactions with neighbors helps in preventing crime.
After my son rang your doorbell a couple of times, your husband appeared to come out in a bit of a hurry. But then, someone else sneaked out of the back door of your house. What?
I exclaimed loudly, surprised. I was at work, and Keith was at school and then tutoring. He shouldn't have been home. Could it have been one of Tanner's co-workers? But they wouldn't need to sneak out of the house. As I urged her to continue with a sense of foreboding, Virginia said with a sympathetic look,
"That was Lucy. Her perm and frizzy hair are unmistakable. She probably thought Abigail or Keith was coming back and hurried out the back. She's had similar issues before, so I was a bit worried. I didn't want to meddle, but I thought you should know." While I was grateful to Virginia, the mention of similar issues caught my attention.
Virginia isn't the type to spread rumors or baseless stories. If she says it was a problem, there must have been something. Upon probing further, she hesitantly shared, "There was a food truck event in the neighborhood once. Lucy got too close to a man she was working with there. Even after the event, they were seen together, and the man's wife caught them. It's unclear, but it turned into a big mess involving both families. In the end, the man moved away, and the issue remained unresolved, but many believe Lucy was the instigator. Indeed, Lucy, despite being married, tends to get too close. Especially to men, which hasn't made her popular among the women." Thinking back, I remember Tanner chatting with Lucy at a New Year's party we attended right after moving here. Could it have been since then? Feeling pale, I thanked Virginia and headed home quickly. Entering the house, I couldn't shake off that feeling again. Perhaps it was because of what Virginia told me, but I felt the presence of someone else strongly. I decided to confront Tanner directly. Beating around the bush has never been my style.
"Hey, did you have someone over today? The sofa cushions seem a bit off,"
I asked, going on a hunch, but Tanner visibly panicked. "So, Lucy was here?"
No one's been here. I was just working in the living room, changed the sofa around a bit for a change of scenery."
I'm usually lenient with children's lies. They're still growing and learning, and getting caught in a lie is part of becoming an adult. But I have no tolerance for lies from adults. Especially lies from my husband. Tanner knows about this, yet he tries to hide it.
"Really? You really didn't let anyone in the house?"
Thinking this was my last chance, I asked him. But Tanner retorted,
"Of course I didn't. Abigail, you keep saying you feel someone's presence, but maybe you're just being overly sensitive because of the high crime awareness in our area?"
At that moment, I was convinced Tanner was having an affair. After that, I started to watch his actions more carefully than ever. When I looked at his behavior with that in mind, it all seemed very suspicious. I found hair that probably belonged to Lucy in Tanner's office, and worse, there were signs someone had been in our bedroom. I couldn't understand how he could leave messages exchanged with her so carelessly while he was showering. The messages they sent each other, talking about how exhilarating and exciting it was to meet, only filled me with contempt. But just hair and screenshots of messages felt like weak evidence. From what I could see in their messages, Tanner and Lucy hadn't made any explicit plans to meet, which might allow them to claim they were just friends. It seems they were communicating within a range that could barely be considered platonic. It seemed I had no choice but to catch them in the act. Wandering around the house with these worries, even Keith must have thought I was acting strange. One day, Keith whispered to me,
"Hey Mom, you've been looking for something a lot lately." "I know."
I panicked, thinking he had realized I was searching for evidence of Tanner's affair, but Keith's thoughts were purely childlike.
Our house must have a ghost. That's what you're looking for, right? I'll help you catch it for Mom.
I remembered once mistakenly asking about ghosts online, thinking it was a paranormal issue. Perhaps it's a case of like mother, like son? Ignoring my reassurances that it was nothing, Keith began excitedly explaining.
I saw how to catch ghosts in an anime. I'll set traps in the room, and if a ghost gets caught, I'll get rid of it for you, so don't worry, Mom.
The trap he set up was so simple it could hardly be called a trap, but it was harmless enough that even if Keith got caught in it himself, he wouldn't be injured. I gave him the okay and then forgot about it, never imagining that such a trap would actually come in handy. The day that would prove to be fateful was the day of our biannual neighborhood safety meeting. Keith and I were attending, of course, but Tanner, finding it a hassle, chose to stay home. I had anticipated this and suspected that Lucy would sneak in to meet him, so I set up webcams at the back door and in the living room. But I had anticipated this. Thinking that Tanner's affair partner, Lucy, would sneak in, I set up webcams at the back door and the living room. Catching Lucy on camera would serve as decisive evidence for a divorce. With this in mind, I took Keith with me to the community center. This year's safety meeting was quite exciting, having invited a crime prevention consultant as the speaker. They taught us how to identify homes targeted by burglars and the methods of door-to-door scammers, using real incidents as examples, which kept even the children engaged.
Mom, I forgot something for the presentation. Can I go back and get it?
Keith asked. He was supposed to present at the children's section of the safety meeting, acting out what to do when approached by a stranger, with little Keith playing the victim. He seems to have forgotten the safety buzzer at home. Luckily, our home was only a 2 to 3 minute walk from the community center, a path he often took to school, so I let him go alone. But in less than 5 minutes, Keith returned, out of breath and excited.
Mom, there's a stranger on the second floor of our house. Their hair looked like it exploded. That must be the ghost in our house.
Since the speaker was on a break, Keith's voice echoed throughout the venue. The exploded hair must be referring to Lucy's permed hair. I couldn't say, it's not a ghost, but probably Dad's affair partner, leaving me puzzled on how to respond. As Keith pulled on my hand, trying to take me home, the crime prevention consultant said something surprising.
If it's a ghost, I'll drive it out. Let's go check it out together.
The people around us lit up with excitement. They seemed thrilled at the opportunity to confront a suspicious person. Dividing into 2 groups, one for the front door and one for the back, they even started assigning members for the breach, leaving me to leave it up to fate. The scene from above my house would have looked like something out of a suspense drama. On the consultant's signal, neighbors burst in from the front and back. The loud footsteps must have startled Tanner.
What's going on?
He exclaimed, running down from the second floor. Today, instead of lounging on the living room sofa, he seemed to have been enjoying his affair upstairs, in the bedroom or office. The crime prevention consultant explained on behalf of me, who was coldly watching Tanner with his shirt hanging out of his pants.
Keith told us there was someone unknown in the house. We thought it was nothing, just a child's word, but we decided to check just in case.
While he spoke, his gaze shifted around without letting his guard down, truly a professional demeanor. He probably noticed his suspicious behavior as well. But Tanner, desperate not to get caught, blustered.
That's ridiculous. I've been alone at home the whole time. So, no one has been in this house.
He wanted to claim that no one had come or gone, but a sudden scream interrupted him.
Ah! What is this?
After a loud crash and a scream from upstairs, everyone's attention shifted.
Hey, don't go up there!
Tanner tried to stop us, but ignoring him, I ran up the stairs. Swept up in the moment, the crime prevention consultant and others followed. What I saw upstairs was Lucy, covered in green slime from head to toe, continuing to scream.
Get this off me, quick!
Seeing the door to the children's room open, I finally understood what had happened. Lucy must have thought it was bad to stay in the bedroom or office upon seeing the crowd arrive and decided to hide in the nearest children's room. Then, she must have fallen right into the trap Keith had set. The loud noise was probably when she tripped over the string, but how her head ended up covered in slime was beyond me. I didn't remember seeing a slime trap when I checked before. Whispering to Keith, who approached, he proudly explained he had improved the trap.
Friends said ghosts don't have feet. So I thought if it doesn't have feet, it won't trip on the string in front of the door. Just in case, I added a trap where slime from a capsule toy container would fall as soon as the door opened.
When I saw it before, there was just a thin string across the front of the door. Children think of interesting things, but using slime was unexpected. To Lucy, hysterically trying to peel the slime off her hair, I coldly said,
So, can you explain why you is here? I'm pretty sure we didn't give you a key to our house.
Lucy turned pale and fell silent. I turned to Tanner, surrounded by neighbors, and spoke.
You said earlier that you were the only one here, but that wasn't true, was it? Can you explain why Lucy was on the second floor?
Despite having so many witnesses, Tanner was stubborn.
Well, that's because I had something to ask Lucy about the neighborhood. I swear, there were no ulterior motives. Believe me, Abigail! Tanner exclaimed.
I was incredulous.
Since we moved here, have you ever participated in a community event even once? If you wanted to know something about our neighbors, you should have actively participated in events like today's safety meeting. How can anyone believe someone who doesn't even do that?
The neighbors around us nodded in agreement, as if it made perfect sense. Tanner shrank under their cold stares. And then one man stepped forward. It was Lucy's husband, Scott.
Lucy, you did it again! I can't stand it anymore. We're getting a divorce.
Lucy burst into tears and tried to cling to Scott, covered in slime. No, please forgive me. It was just a little thrill. Scott shook off her hand.
Don't touch me with those dirty hands. Now that it's come to this, I'll also be taking back the compensation money I fronted for our previous divorce proceedings.
The incident with the food truck Virginia mentioned was indeed about an affair. Scott had defended Lucy once and paid the compensation money, but now felt betrayed. Inspired by Scott, I decided not to show any more leniency towards Tanner.
Tanner, you've left all the community interactions to me and used working from home as a cover for your affairs. I'm getting a divorce, so prepare yourself.
Tanner looked utterly shocked. Abigail, I'm sorry. I was tempted by the devil's whisper. I won't do it again. Please forgive me. No matter what was said, my heart wouldn't budge. Tanner must have known he was the reason Keith and I felt uneasy about the presence of someone else in our home. Yet, he chose to continue seeing his affair partner, Lucy, over addressing our fears. How could I keep such a person as Keith's dad? I kicked him out of the house that very day. I couldn't bear to live in this house where Tanner enjoyed his affair, so I planned to sell it. However, I intend to use the entire sale amount as compensation for the divorce proceedings and maybe buy an apartment in this neighborhood with that money. Despite the incident with Tanner's affair, this area has excellent crime prevention, making it a wonderful place to live. It should be safe for Keith and me to live here alone. Adding up the compensation money I plan to claim from Lucy, I should be able to purchase a more secure home than the current one. I'm considering asking that crime prevention consultant for advice on how to choose a safe apartment. I'm a 30-year-old housewife. My husband, Thomas, is a 32-year-old office worker, and we have 2 children, our 5-year-old daughter, Karen, and our 2-year-old son, John. Becoming a mother to Karen was the reason I became a housewife, though I originally worked at the same company as Thomas. We had what you might call an office romance. Although Thomas and I were in different departments, we often visited each other's desks, and after he initiated contact, we started dating when I was 23. At first, we kept our relationship a secret, but as people began to notice, we received a lot of support and eventually got married. Soon after our marriage, I got pregnant with Karen and gave birth the following year. I had planned to return to work after maternity leave, but Thomas said, "I want Megan to take care of the home, and I want Karen to spend a lot of time with her mom. I'll work hard and earn for us." Encouraged by this, I decided to quit my job and stay at home. Fortunately, Thomas earned a decent income, and I agreed to his wish. As a housewife, I gave birth to our second child, John, 2 years ago, and our family of 4 has been living together since. With just Karen, it was manageable, but having 2 children made me worry about saving for the future on just Thomas's salary. After discussing it with Thomas, we decided it was time for me to go back to work. However, just as I had finally found a job, Thomas dropped a bombshell. He was being sent on a solo assignment. "I have to go to the Seattle branch for at least a year, maybe 3, starting in 2 months. "What? Seattle? But I've just found a job. This is really inconvenient." "Can't be helped. It's already decided." "What about the kids' daycare and their friends?" "Why are you bringing up their friends?" "Because moving to Seattle means saying goodbye to them." "Ah, sorry, that came out wrong. I'll be going to Seattle alone. I've told my mom and she's okay with it because Megan will be there for the kids. It'll be fine." "You're going alone? But your company could have refused, right? Why didn't you discuss this with me? I wanted you to be there for the kids as their dad." "Quit nagging. It's decided. The kids will be happy with Megan, their mom, by their side. And about your job, it's just a part-time job. The pay is barely pocket money. Just quit it. After this assignment, I'll be up for promotion." "What about the kids? They're still so young to be away from their dad." "Honestly, taking care of the kids has been a hassle. They're not even that attached to me since I'm always at work. They'll be fine without me." This was Thomas's rationale. But back at the company where I used to work, even though they would ask about relocating to a distant location, married employees could refuse without it affecting their evaluation. So, I believe Thomas must have been approached about this a few months ago, agreed to it, and then received his official orders, all without consulting me. Finding out this way, without any discussion on such an important matter, really upset me. And it was the first time I learned he thought taking care of the kids was a hassle. Sure, he'd avoid going out on his days off, claiming he was tired from work, but hearing him say it outright really hurt. The only saving grace was that the kids were asleep during this conversation and didn't hear any of Thomas's words. By the way, I live in Atlanta, so Seattle is a plane ride away. After discussing it with Thomas, we made several promises: to video call once a week, always return messages, keep each other updated regularly, and for him to spend time with the kids when he's back. For now, despite my anxieties, I've decided to send him off with a good spirit since complaining won't change anything. In the first few months after Thomas left for his solo assignment, he kept his promise to video call, sent presents for the kids' birthdays, and always came back for long vacations. fulfilling his role as a dad during Christmas and Thanksgiving within his limited time. However, as time passed, he started using his busy schedule as an excuse to reduce the frequency of our video calls and began to ignore my messages, essentially breaking most of our agreements. With support from both our parents, I started working, and last year, I began working as a full-time employee. About a year and a half after Thomas started his solo assignment, I received a message from my former coworker, Savannah.
Megan, did you and Thomas split up?
No. We're not split up. He's on a solo assignment, so communication has been a bit scarce.
Thomas might be cheating on you at his assignment location.
What? Why would you suddenly say that? To my surprise, my former coworker sent me a screenshot of a social media post. It showed Thomas with a woman in her mid-20s, both smiling and showing off rings on their ring fingers, with the caption "Getting married soon." Who is this? Wait, getting married as in marrying Thomas?
I'm not sure, but a colleague of mine, Steven, who went to the Seattle branch, said he saw Thomas walking closely with a woman when he tried to invite him for drinks after work.
Savannah continued to share what she learned. Steven, upon spotting Thomas with the woman, called out to him without thinking, but the woman said, "Thomas has always been so helpful," making Steven realize something was off for the first time. Thomas seemed pale, but the woman, unfazed, even invited Steven to join them for a meal. Apparently, both Thomas and Steven initially declined, but a colleague from the Seattle branch of Thomas's office was eager to join.
"I'm going to join the dinner too."
He seemed enthusiastic about it, and that led to a strange dinner where they ended up exchanging social media contacts with the woman Thomas was cheating with. Of course, Thomas made Steven swear to secrecy, and Steven agreed.
"I'm dating Steven. That's why I was using his phone when I got a social media update notification. It was annoying on the screen, so I was going to delete it but ended up tapping on it,"
Savannah said with a bitter expression. "When I confronted Steven about it, he confessed everything. Since Thomas is his senior, he felt he couldn't speak up after being told to keep quiet. I'm really sorry," Savannah said that and bowed her head to me.
"No, thank you for telling me."
After this conversation, I immediately consulted my parents about it. I wanted to hire a detective, but, having just started working, I didn't have the disposable income. My parents were furious after hearing my story and seeing the photo, and they offered to cover the investigation costs. It didn't cost much, because Thomas was living with his affair partner, Kelly. Quickly gathering evidence, I thought about filing for divorce right away, but being a housewife with no stable income at the time, and realizing the tough situation it would put me and the kids in, I spent the next 6 months job hunting until I secured a position. After working hard for a year to stabilize my life, just when I was about to propose divorce to Thomas, "My assignment is over, and I'll be back next week," he messaged me out of the blue. "Yeah, you could have told me sooner." I swallowed those words and asked Thomas about his return schedule, deciding to welcome him back. On the day Thomas was supposed to return, I couldn't make it because of work, and the kids were at my parents' house, so Thomas was supposed to come back to an empty house. But what awaited him was actually my daughter Karen, now in the 2nd grade, 5-year-old John, and my mother, Serena. "I'm home." "Hey, Megan? No one's here to welcome me back?"
"Thomas, weren't you supposed to come back later?"
"Huh? Serena? Why are you here?" Peeking out from behind her surprised grandma was Karen. "Oh, Karen. You've gotten so big." Thomas apparently spread his arms to hug her, but Karen ignored him and said,
"Grandma, let's go back to your house quickly."
"Karen? It's Dad embarrassed, maybe?" Oh, there's John too. Come here.
No, Grandma, who is this man?
Dad, what are you talking about?
Mom and Grandma said not to follow strangers.
Is it okay? Dad got John's favorite chocolate.
Mom said chocolate from scary people doesn't taste good, so I shouldn't take it.
Actually, Thomas hadn't been home for a year and a half by then, so honestly, for John, Thomas was just someone he had seen a few times over video calls. While Thomas was confused by the children's reactions, I happened to come home and walked into this awkward situation.
Huh? Thomas, weren't you supposed to come back later? And why are the kids here?
I'm so sorry, Megan. John really wanted his toy that he left at home. I heard Thomas would be back later, so I thought it would be okay.
What's with that tone? It's like you're saying it's my fault for coming back early. I've been on this solo assignment for 3 years, feeling lonely all for the sake of my family.
Don't raise your voice in front of the kids.
Megan, what kind of parenting have you done for the kids to become so cheeky? Karen is ignoring me, and John is treating me like some unknown old man.
It's obvious, isn't it? Old man, what do you want now? It was Karen who spoke up, blaming Thomas.
After leaving us behind, you didn't keep your promises to Mom, and you didn't want to take care of us, right? That's why you left, isn't it? What are you talking about? I heard you talking to Mom before you disappeared from home. You said the kids should just be looked after by Mom. Old man, you said taking care of us was a hassle. Karen, you heard that. I woke up to go to the bathroom that day. I didn't understand what the conversation was about then, but I could tell Mom's voice was sad. Now that I'm in elementary school and understand what hassle means, I get what old man was saying.
Karen said this, looking like she was about to cry.
Karen, Dad didn't mean it like that. Then why did you break your promises to Mom? Why didn't you come home? It's because taking care of us was a hassle, right? Hey, Megan! You must have instilled some weird ideas in them, right? Don't be mean to Mom and Karen.
John interrupted Thomas's loud accusations against me after hearing Karen's story. He had let go of Mom's hand and charged at Thomas with all his might, but he tripped over Thomas's carry-on case and fell forward on his way. John's head collided with Thomas's chin as he was squatting down, causing Thomas to fall back and hurt his back, and John started crying from the pain of the collision. Seeing this, Karen, her face red with anger, yelled,
"Apologize to Mom now! John is crying because he's hurt. Get out of the way!"
and kicked the carry-on case as hard as she could. The case, pushed with all of Karen's might, crashed into Thomas's groin and then fell onto his lower abdomen. Thomas writhed in pain, ending up in a collapsed position.
It doesn't seem like we can have a proper conversation today, but let me make it clear that we don't need you in our family anymore.
Feeling somewhat satisfied with Thomas's plight, yet not wanting to leave the kids with him, I went back to my parents' house with Mom and the kids. The next day, I contacted Thomas to arrange a meeting with him, my parents, and his parents to discuss what comes next.
I know about your affair and that you were living with your mistress at your assignment. I can't live with someone like that, and the kids think their dad is gone. So, please, let's get a divorce. Wait a minute! What affair? Did you hear something from Steven? He's just jealous and has been feeding you lies about me. What lies? You're getting married to Kelly, right? And I have proof that you two were living together.
I said this, laying out the printed screenshots of Kelly's social media and evidence from the detective on the table.
Thomas, this is not what I heard. Could it all be Megan's misunderstanding? I don't know what story Thomas has told you, but the truth is he was living with a woman named Kelly during his assignment. Moreover, she's planning to sue him for marriage fraud, claiming they were engaged to be married.
What? It was just a fling. Megan is the one I truly love.
And the kids?
The kids too.
Saying it like an afterthought doesn't make you fit to be their dad. I said this, glaring at Thomas. In the end, Thomas, facing the fury of my father-in-law, Kendrick, signed the divorce papers then and there, agreeing to the alimony and child support claims, finalizing our divorce. Thomas had spent a significant amount of money on his life with Kelly, claiming to me his salary had decreased, which was also revealed to be a lie, and I ended up receiving all assets without division. Kelly also sued him for compensation for breaking off their engagement and additionally for a settlement over marriage fraud, leading Thomas into debt. It seems Stephen had contacted Kelly through social media. While it's unclear if what Thomas did to Kelly qualifies as marriage fraud, Kendrick's scolding led him to settle with her as well. Moreover, Kelly came all the way from Seattle to our home in Atlanta, stormed into the company, and exposed Thomas's double life. As a result, Thomas, who was supposed to return and get promoted, ended up being demoted to a remote branch. As for me, after staying at my parents' house for a while, I started dating a man I had a connection with. Actually, while Thomas was on his solo assignment, an old childhood friend, William, had been affectionately looking after my children. Due to an illness he suffered as a child, William was infertile and had given up on the idea of marriage and having children of his own, which made him all the more affectionate towards my kids. When my divorce was finalized, William confessed, "I want to watch Megan's children grow up. More than anything, I want to be by Megan's side." At first, I hesitated because I hadn't sorted out my feelings, but after a few months since divorcing Thomas, seeing how much the kids adored William and how much he had supported me emotionally, I accepted his feelings since I had grown fond of him as well. I can't think about remarriage yet, but for the happiness of my children, I'm willing to do whatever I can.
Something feels off.
I try to pinch my cheeks to ward off the sudden wave of sleepiness, but it's utterly ineffective. There wasn't anything particularly exhausting about today, just a meal at my in-laws. And I'm not usually short on sleep. Why then, I wonder drowsily, when I hear my husband's laughter.
Good night, LOL. I'll make sure you have sweet dreams.
My name is Lila, a 24-year-old office worker, newly married to Riley, who is 5 years my senior. We met through a friend and, after dating for 2 years, were happily married. We had a grand wedding recently and received blessings from many people. Just as I was dreaming about our happy married life ahead, an unexpected misfortune struck. Emerson, my mother-in-law, suddenly fell ill and passed away in no time. Emerson was cheerful and very kind, delighted when I first went to greet her.
Nice to meet you, I'm Lila. Oh, what a joy to have such a lovely woman as my son's wife. I've always dreamed of having tea time with my son's wife. I'd be delighted. Please, let's have tea time together.
Though I was nervous, Emerson welcomed me with a full smile, making me feel at ease and fond of her. We had planned to have tea time together after the wedding settled down, but that dream was shattered with Emerson's passing. We were busy with Emerson's funeral, sorting out her belongings, and handling the inheritance, finally settling down a year later. Then, I got a call from Trevor, my father-in-law.
Layla, how about a meal at our house next weekend night? I'm thinking of ordering takeout. Yes, of course. Thank you.
So, I was invited to dine with Trevor next weekend night, along with Riley. Trevor ordered Singaporean cuisine, which he loves, and we enjoyed the feast. The three of us gathered around the dining table. It was my first time trying Singaporean cuisine, and everything was delicious.
Except, the soup tasted oddly. Curious, I asked my husband.
Hey Riley, doesn't this soup taste a bit strange? That's just how this dish is. You're not used to Singaporean cuisine, haha.
Though Riley laughed it off, I couldn't stomach the soup, so I avoided it and ate the other dishes. Then, I felt Trevor's sharp gaze.
Lila, I went through the trouble of ordering this, so make sure you drink the soup.
Startled by Trevor's outburst, I hurriedly gulped down the soup. It still tasted weird. The strange taste spread throughout my mouth, and I tried to cleanse my palate with water and other dishes. Gradually, my vision blurred, and I found myself slumping over the table.
What's happening? I'm incredibly sleepy. This isn't good. I'll really fall asleep. I need to stay awake.
As my consciousness faded, I could hear Riley's laughter.
It seems to have worked. Dad, is that thing ready? Of course, it's all set. It's in the dresser drawer in the bedroom. The new ones are amazing, only 0.01 millimeters thick. We didn't have those when I was young.
Realizing Riley and Trevor were discussing contraceptives, I felt a sense of danger but then lost consciousness completely. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed.
What happened?
I murmured groggily.
Oh, thank goodness. You're awake.
Looking towards the voice, there was our neighbor, Luella. Luella immediately called the doctor, who explained that I had been given a large dose of sleeping pills.
Sleeping pills! So that's why the soup tasted so odd.
Then, I learned from Luella.
Your dad and husband ran off in the car, so I accompanied you in the ambulance. I'm so glad you woke up safely. Really? Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the trouble. But, what do you mean Dad and my husband fled in a car?
Actually,
Luella found out that the fire alarm was ringing at my in-laws' house and it wouldn't stop, so she decided to check on them. When she rang the doorbell, Trevor came out.
yes.
What's going on, ringing the fire alarm like this? It's been going off for so long. Haven't you found the source yet? This is serious. I'm coming in. Please, it's okay. Don't come into the house. What are you talking about? We're supposed to help each other out in times of need.
Luella said that, barging into the house, and found me lying listlessly in the living room.
Oh my! You've collapsed from inhaling smoke. This is terrible. I need to call an ambulance right away. No, this is different.
Trevor and my husband tried to deny it hastily, but Luella was convinced I had collapsed from smoke inhalation and called for emergency and fire services on the spot.
Lila is just sleeping. That's right. My wife is just tired and sleeping. There's nothing to worry about.
Despite their desperate explanations, Luella objected.
It's strange that she won't wake up with such a loud noise going on. I'm worried. I wonder if the ambulance will arrive soon.
Luella was frantic. Before we knew it, people had started gathering. Riley and Trevor began to sweat profusely. Soon after, Riley and Trevor hurriedly jumped into a car and fled, leaving me behind. That's why Luella ended up accompanying me in the ambulance.
Such a thing. Thank you so much.
I expressed my gratitude to Luella. Then, when I told the doctor about the conversation I heard between Riley and Trevor before losing consciousness, he grimaced and made a call, and I was informed that Riley and Trevor were also admitted to the same hospital.
Riley and Dad are hospitalized. Why?
Apparently, after fleeing the house in the car, Riley and Trevor were driving frantically to get as far away as possible. As a result, the car Riley was driving crashed into the wall of a mansion, causing an accident. Both were brought to this hospital by ambulance, severely injured with broken bones, but their lives were not in danger. Hearing the reason for their admission, I was overwhelmed with anger, disgust, and various other emotions.
They got what they deserved. I'll never forgive them.
I decided to hire a lawyer and sue over this incident. Then, sleeping pills were detected in the soup bowl I had finished, and Riley and Trevor were arrested for assault. The news even reported on the incident. Later, during the police investigation, they were rearrested for attempted rape. Trevor was stressed from being busy with Emerson's funeral and other matters, becoming frustrated. He was planning to visit a nightclub, but when Riley found out, he made a proposition to Trevor.
Dad, if you're that frustrated, I can lend you Lila. But in return, give me Mom's kimonos. Eh? Really? I'd be thrilled to be with young Lila, but...
Why Mom's kimonos? Are you running out of money?
Yeah, I kinda blew through my savings.
Riley had squandered his savings on gambling and offered me in exchange for Emerson's kimonos, which came from a distinguished family and were valuable. Riley knew this and proposed the trade to Trevor.
Lila doesn't know I'm hooked on gambling. I've used quite a bit from our joint savings account, so I want to cover it up before she finds out. I see. But I can't imagine Lila agreeing to be with me. That's okay. I have a good idea. You still have some of Mom's sleeping pills, right?
Emerson had been prescribed sleeping pills for her insomnia before she passed away. With those sleeping pills remaining, Riley and Trevor concocted their plan. They decided to dissolve powdered sleeping pills in the soup and proceed after I had fallen asleep.
Perfect plan, right? This way I get money, and Dad's frustration is relieved. It's all good. Right. Let's invite Lila over for a dinner party next weekend.
However, their scheme was abruptly foiled by the ringing of the fire alarm, leading to the foolish outcome of causing an accident in their haste to flee in the car. It turns out Riley and Trevor are hospitalized in the same room.
Damn it! How did it come to this? It was supposed to be a perfect plan.
If only the fire alarm hadn't gone off. In the end, we couldn't do anything with Lila and ended up getting seriously injured. What a mess.
Damn it!
As they openly wept and voiced their grievances, a nurse visiting their room informed them with displeasure. I had demanded compensation through a lawyer in the divorce proceedings, but both of them flatly refused to pay any settlement for the divorce.
To demand compensation from me, her husband, in a divorce trial. Nothing actually happened, so it should be fine. That's right! In the end, all we did was give Lila sleeping pills and nothing else.
Both their reasoning left me and my lawyer utterly dumbfounded. Even when told that administering sleeping pills without consent is unacceptable, they wouldn't listen at all. Moreover,
Hey! Lila! Tell the police not to sue me and Dad. If the victim asks for a non-prosecution, the police won't sue, right?
they had the audacity to command. How low could they possibly be? I continued to ignore them, but they persistently demanded not to sue and to ask for a lighter sentence. However, their demands suddenly stopped at one point. After giving orders every day, it was strange for them to suddenly cease. Curious, I decided to investigate. It turns out, they had encountered a serious problem. The owner of the mansion whose wall was destroyed when Riley and Trevor crashed into it was furious and had demanded they pay for the repairs. The damage was extensive, so the cost of repairs was significant. Moreover, my husband had lied, saying, "We were rushing to the hospital because Dad was suffering from an illness, and that led to the driving mistake." However, the incident was reported in the news. Upon learning the truth, the mansion owner became even more enraged and insisted on receiving both the repair costs and compensation from the divorce trial. As a result, Riley and Trevor seemed to have bigger problems than just dealing with me. "It wasn't on purpose. Please forgive us. We beg you." Riley and Trevor were pleading, but the mansion owner was unforgiving. They were told they must pay no matter what. Since the mansion owner hired a lawyer, Riley and Trevor also had to hire one to handle the situation. Since I had a lawyer as well, the compensation for the divorce was smoothly negotiated between the lawyers. Given their clear wrongdoing, our demands were almost fully met. I also demanded and received the money Riley had misappropriated from our joint savings account. Although I hadn't noticed his gambling addiction, I remembered how his overtime had suddenly increased at one point. Probably, he was lying about working late and going to pachinko instead. And so, I naturally proceeded with the divorce from Riley. The negotiations were handled by our lawyers, and though initially reluctant, Riley agreed to the divorce when I firmly insisted. Riley's lawyer played a significant role by convincing them that they were in a very unfavorable position and needed to show sincerity. Later, I went to thank our neighbor Luella again.
Thank you so much. I don't know how to express my gratitude.
Oh, I didn't do anything special. It's good that you're safe. Perhaps Emerson was looking out for you.
Emerson, you say? What do you mean? After I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, the firefighters came and checked the cause of the fire alarm. However, the only source of fire in the house was a candle on Emerson's altar, which no one should have lit. This wasn't enough to trigger the fire alarm, indicating a possible malfunction as there were no other signs of fire.
Maybe Emerson is always watching over you? She was so happy to have such a lovely daughter-in-law,
Luella told me with a smile. It might have been a coincidence, but even so, I felt a warmth thinking about Emerson's kind smile. After expressing my thanks to Luella again, I headed to a certain cake shop. This shop sells a chocolate cake that I've always loved. When I had promised to have tea time with Emerson, I wanted her to try the chocolate from this cake shop. After buying sweet buns, I went to the florist to buy flowers that matched Emerson's cheerful image, with a fresh impression, and headed to visit her grave. Offering the flowers and chocolate at the grave, I expressed my gratitude to Emerson.
Dear Emerson, thank you so much. Your help saved me. Though I've divorced Riley, I will always love you, Mom.
I wished I could have talked more with Emerson. I wanted to have that tea party.
This chocolate was meant to be shared with you, Emerson, during our tea time. It's really delicious.
Just then, the wind blew softly. Feeling as if Emerson had responded, a tear fell from my eye. But thinking that crying would worry Emerson, I lifted my face, smiled, and said,
I'll visit again, Emerson,
and moved on. I decided to take the chocolate back with me later, as I couldn't leave it at the grave. On the way home, I felt incredibly refreshed. Despite everything, I vowed to live energetically from tomorrow on. Returning to single life, I threw myself into work more than ever before. Riley and Trevor, with their complex fractures, seem to still be in the hospital. The owner of the mansion is trying to collect the repair costs before they are discharged and sent to prison, and it seems they had to sell their car and belongings to pay back the money using their savings. Physically and mentally devastated, and with prison time awaiting them. They are experiencing a living hell. I hope they reflect deeply and pay for their crimes once they are discharged and sent to prison. Since then, I've been visiting Emerson's grave regularly, updating her on my life. Having had enough of love for a while, I've decided to enjoy being single and am studying hard to earn new qualifications. I plan to live every day without regrets. My husband called me disgusting for my severe morning sickness, looking down on me with cold eyes.
You're the one who threw up and made a mess, right? Hurry up and open the window to air it out. If the smell sticks, you're paying for it. Just because you find it hard to go shopping or cook doesn't mean morning sickness isn't an illness. Don't be so stupid.
On top of that, as my morning sickness got worse, my husband left me at home and went on an overseas trip with mother-in-law, Audrina. That was the last straw for me, and I began to plot my revenge. A week later, my husband called, furious.
I laughed it off. Since you told me to clean the house, I did just as you said. Got a problem with that?
I'm Kimberly, a 28-year-old office worker. My husband, Eamon, and I live in a detached house and both work while we've recently become pregnant. While I was happy, my morning sickness was so severe that I couldn't go to work on some days. Fortunately, many at my workplace were understanding.
Once you get through this, it'll get easier, so make sure to rest and take care of yourself.
They gave me some time off when I was considering quitting. So, I spent my days at home, resting as much as possible, eating when I could, and doing household chores. The problem was my husband. He practically stopped doing any housework at all.
You're always at home, right? Even a pregnant woman can clean, so at least do that.
While my husband used to do household chores when we were both working, he stopped doing anything since I took my leave. Even when I said I couldn't do it because of severe nausea, he wouldn't listen. Moreover, he compared me to other pregnant women he had seen, saying,
"Just being lazy and slacking off in the name of morning sickness."
Furthermore, he was extremely averse to me vomiting. The first time I vomited at home, I didn't make it to the toilet and ended up using the living room trash can. Seeing this, my husband, pinching his nose, hurried me to ventilate the room and kept yelling at me, even though my nausea hadn't subsided. Although I vomited into a plastic bag in the trash can, so the can itself wasn't dirty, he made me dispose of the bag and then threw the trash can away.
Hey, what's with that attitude? Why are you telling me to open a window when I'm vomiting? You could open it yourself. And I properly sealed the double bag before throwing it away, so why throw out the trash can in front of me as if to make a point?
Disgusting, smelly, don't talk.
Even if it's in a plastic bag, droplets might have gotten on the trash can.
After that, no matter what I said, don't talk because it's smelly, he wouldn't even listen. I started to consider divorce. Maybe once my morning sickness settled down and I could go back to work, my husband would return to being the kind and helpful person he used to be. But could a husband who hurled such abuse at me while I was suffering return to how he was? Or was this his true nature? As I worried, my morning sickness only got worse. With nausea hitting me multiple times a day, I started carrying a plastic bag with me everywhere in the house to vomit without my husband seeing and dispose of it. However, one time, I didn't manage to dispose of it in time, and he saw me with the bag.
Don't touch anything, all right? You're paying for the sofa you just sat on since you're going to dispose of it because you dirted it.
He looked at me with utter disgust. When I impulsively brought up divorce, I noticed he was holding a pamphlet in his hand. He spread it out to show me.
In about 2 weeks, I'm going on a trip overseas with Mom. We plan to stay for about a week. Don't slack off on cleaning just because I'm not here. Keep the house clean.
What? What are you thinking?
While looking at me coldly, my husband laughed in a low voice.
I don't want to stay in a house you've made filthy. The morning sickness should settle down in about 3 weeks, right? By the time I'm back from the trip, it should be nearly over, so clean the house in the meantime.
Fine. I'll give the house a thorough cleaning. The next 2 weeks were tough for me. He doubled down on doing nothing, even eating strongly scented meals or spraying harsh perfume around the room despite my pleas because it made me nauseous. Despite locking me in the bathroom, he'd bang on the door furiously and yell if he wanted to use it himself. This lifestyle continued. I immediately informed my parents that I had decided on divorce. Since my husband's attitude changed, I had been discussing it with my parents, who must have realized from my words that convincing me otherwise was no longer possible. They told me to come back home immediately. However, just divorcing and returning to my parents' home wasn't enough for me. I was determined to teach my husband, who lacked any awareness of being a father and thought nothing of the individual differences in pregnancy and morning sickness, a lesson. 2 weeks later, I saw my husband off with a large carry-on bag. These 2 weeks were the peak of my morning sickness, and I had lost more than 2 kilos. If it continued like this, I would end up hospitalized due to severe pregnancy sickness. Seeing me visibly thinner, my husband still called me dirty and, after repeatedly ordering me to clean the house, fled like he was escaping. I stayed at the entrance until he was out of sight, then took a deep breath and made a phone call. A week later, I was leisurely sitting in my parents' living room when calls from my husband kept coming in. Calls from my husband kept coming in one after another. After watching for a while, my parents started to panic, so I reluctantly answered.
Don't mess with me. What the hell is this? Explain.
I instinctively moved my smartphone away from my ear at the sound of my husband's loud voice the moment the call connected. Still, I sighed at the loud enough voice and listened to him.
I can't get into the house. What's going on? Don't change the locks on me while I'm away.
The real estate agent changed them. It's kind of gross to have the same keys as the previous tenant for the next one, right? So, they changed the locks when selling the house. Huh? Real estate agent? Oh, didn't you see the sign? It's right there next to it, for sale.
There was silence on the phone for a while before the angry voice came again.
What are you doing on your own? Who gave you permission to sell it? Why are you selling it?
You said the whole house smells. So, I cleaned the entire house, including that. And why would I need anyone's permission to sell my house?
Your house. That's not right. That house belongs to your grandfather. It's a crime to sell it without being the title holder.
That house was given to me, I remodeled it, and it's in my name. You can't just sell it if you're not the title holder.
Indeed, the house we lived in belonged to my grandfather. However, after my grandfather passed away, I, still single, remodeled it into its current form, and after getting married, my husband moved in to live together. My husband was momentarily speechless knowing the title was in my name, but quickly changed his approach.
That house is where I live too. You can't just kick out a resident like that. It's illegal to sell my stuff. Besides, it was our house since we lived there as a couple, so it's not just your house anymore.
Unfortunately, that house was in my name before we got married. We never changed it to a joint title after marriage. Plus, I moved all the stuff out after, so your things are all safe. I did dispose of the sofa you said was smelly, though.
My husband seemed panicked by the mention of moving out his belongings. He was asking where and when.
It's at your grandmother's house. After all, you're away with Dad gone and no siblings. There was nowhere else to send it but your grandmother's when you went overseas with Audrina.
Hearing his belongings were at his kind grandmother's house seemed to calm my husband for a moment, but his voice quickly filled with anger again.
So, you're the kind of woman who sells the house and dumps the belongings while her husband is on a trip. I'm divorcing you. I'll sue for compensation in the divorce court because of this.
It's a relief you're the one bringing up divorce. I don't want you to come to the house anymore, and I'll be heading there with my lawyer soon. So, goodbye.
I wonder if my husband truly believed he could win if he took it to court. I calmed my panicking parents while contacting a lawyer. A week later, when I went to what my husband calls his in-laws' house, Audrina slapped me before I even entered the door. I had expected it and deliberately received the slap.
Because of you, the house is a mess. A woman who can't even do housework because of a little morning sickness is useless. Pay the compensation in the divorce court and let's divorce.
As I was rubbing my stinging cheek, planning to retort to Audrina, she saw someone behind me and her face twisted.
I thought you showed no remorse, but to strike immediately upon meeting is something else.
Behind me was Carol, my husband's grandmother, looking furious.
Hello. I'm really sorry for sending the belongings over so suddenly the other day. That's all right. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have noticed at all.
I had come to the in-laws' house, which was now the home of my husband's grandmother, who had kindly accepted his belongings. When I sent my husband's belongings, I included a letter of apology, detailing everything about our situation. As a result, the grandmother was furious with her grandson's husband for hurling terrible words at his wife suffering from morning sickness and leaving her to fend for herself. She was equally furious at Audrina for going on an overseas trip with him without admonishing such behavior. The grandmother, now 80 years old, is a gentle figure to her grandson but a disagreeable mother-in-law to Audrina. Since Audrina married into the family, her relationship with the grandmother, due to their clashing personalities, has always been like cats and dogs. Sure enough, Audrina, upon suddenly facing the grandmother, twisted her face in obvious annoyance, which only fueled the grandmother's anger further. After briefly addressing the shouting match between the two, I entered the house. There, my husband stood, dumbfounded next to the grandmother and Audrina. It might have been shocking for my husband to see his kind grandmother and mother arguing so fiercely. However, wanting to discuss matters with my husband without Audrina's interference, I had informed the grandmother of my visit in advance. And we started the divorce negotiation with my lawyer before Audrina could return. The process didn't take much time and ended smoothly. The compensation amount my husband had prepared for the divorce court and its basis were systematically dismantled by my lawyer, leaving him speechless. After a thorough division of assets and agreeing not to approach me except when visiting our child after its birth, my husband readily agreed, and our marriage ended abruptly. As I was leaving the house, the grandmother and Audrina were still standing next to each other. I addressed them briefly before departing, but they seemed too heated in their argument to pay me any mind. Subsequently, I began receiving a barrage of complaint-like emails from my ex-husband. Apparently, he became annoyed with the grandmother coming to the in-laws' house and meddling. Imagining my former husband and Audrina, who had shouted at me so boldly, becoming meek in front of a petite grandmother, finally brought me to laughter. However, the nature of my ex-husband's emails soon shifted towards seeking reconciliation. Every day there's shouting. They both ask me what I think when they're fighting, dragging me into it, and it's annoying. It's a lifetime request. Please, let me stay at your place. I'll do household chores or anything. I won't do anything terrible again, and I'll never say it. I want to meet our coming child too. I love you. I want to remarry you. I responded mechanically. I will not reconcile. As for the child, you can meet if you pay child support. And left it at that. Eventually, the messages from my ex-husband ceased. Apparently, unable to bear the living conditions, he left Audrina and went somewhere. Not providing any support, Audrina, not yet of pensionable age, is scraping by on her savings. Audrina herself contacted me with this news. No one's helping me. Please, I want to stay at your place. I only went on the trip with my son because he invited me. I had no idea you were suffering so much from morning sickness. She claimed, lining up convenient excuses over the phone, but when I threatened to report her to the police, the calls stopped. Apparently, the grandmother also refused to help, and Audrina, limited by her savings, began working part-time. Thus, she no longer had the energy to call or email me. However, the altercation between the grandmother and Audrina that day is well known throughout the neighborhood, and they saw me deliberately receiving Audrina's slap. Consequently, the neighbors have distanced themselves from Audrina, leaving her to live uncomfortably in her home. Seemingly unable to afford renting a new apartment, she spends her days diminishing in stature. Yet, living alone in a rent-free house should be manageable on a part-time income. My morning sickness has finally subsided, and I no longer vomit. The doctor, learning of my divorce and the circumstances around it, scolded me for accumulating too much stress, which wouldn't help in healing. Though I had been consulting with my family, the stress from living with an uncooperative ex-husband for a while, and dealing with real estate agents online to sell the house had been too much on my body, and I reflected on this. Moving forward, I plan to avoid stress and return to work. Anyway, I'll be taking maternity leave before giving birth, planning to live at my parents' house. Now, imagining the appearance of my unborn child brings me immense joy. As the days go by, my anticipation grows, and I can hardly wait to see what kind of child will be born. No matter what, I intend to raise my child with love.
Risa, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff into our house. What? What do you mean by that?
While I was on a trip, my husband Polly had moved his parents' moving boxes into our house without asking. And on top of that, I received unbelievable treatment from Polly.
You should not come back anymore.
Polly doesn't want me to come back home anymore. Even though this house is where our family has always lived, Polly wants to kick me out and live with his parents. However, I had anticipated being kicked out by Polly and easily retorted, "Okay, I'll move out on my own." I sought advice from my dad, Mike, and took a certain action. First, I sent an email to someone and made a plan. I returned to America with Mike. And then, I came back to our house. I started to execute the plan as intended. Polly, who had been naively thinking he could live with his parents, was surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Actually, the plan I had made with Mike was, my name is Risa. I am a 45-year-old dietitian working in a hospital. Originally, I was supposed to follow in Mike's footsteps, but inheriting my mom's love for cooking, I became a dietitian. However, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, Mike started working in France, so we sold the house I was born and raised in, and I started living alone in an apartment. Being plain-looking since childhood, I've always been inconspicuous wherever I go. Moreover, attending girls' schools from middle school to university, I had no encounters with men, and I had never had a boyfriend. However, I was fortunate to meet good people wherever I went, and after graduating from college, I got married. At that friend's wedding, I met my current husband, Polly, who was 3 years older than me and a friend of the groom. He seemed like the type who would be popular with the ladies. Luckily, or perhaps coincidentally, he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend was a nurse, and it seems they broke up due to misaligned schedules and night shifts. When I mentioned that I was a dietitian with early mornings and few holidays, he was very pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for the national exam for registered dietitians, so I was busy on weekends. Even so, he was kind enough to send me messages, saying, "I miss not being able to see you, but good luck with your studies." Feeling a sense of destiny with him, I thought I'd like to marry him if I passed. And on the day of the exam results, he invited me out to celebrate my passing that night.
Congratulations on passing!
This is how I feel, would you accept it? What he handed me was an engagement ring. He proposed to me right then and there. Overjoyed as if my passing was his own, I tearfully said yes right away. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought about living in an apartment, but with Mike's help, we bought our own home. I was looking forward to a happy life from now on, but after getting married, I started to feel a sense of discomfort around Polly. Thinking it was because I had no experience with men, I assumed it would be okay once I got used to it. However, one day, when Polly was looking at my pay stub, he made a comment that made me do a double take. "What's this?" I thought dietitians, being professionals, would earn more. I'm disappointed. What? Well, I just started working, and we're both working, so an income of around $200,000 should be fine, right? I retorted, feeling somewhat offended. It's not like I got married to be supported by my husband, but being told my salary was low didn't feel good. Yet, Polly went on to insult my earnings further.
I've been totally deceived. If I knew the income was this low, I would have asked before getting married. A nurse would have earned more.
Polly must have been talking about his ex-girlfriend. It's one thing to complain about my earnings, but comparing me to his ex-girlfriend is unforgivable. Indeed, nurses receive night shift allowances and holiday pay. In comparison, my salary is lower because I have fewer early mornings and holiday shifts. However, I have my own side of the story to tell. I happened to see Polly's pay stub the other day, and it turns out he earns even less than I do. Yet, I thought we wouldn't struggle with our combined incomes, so I didn't say anything. I tried to gently break it to Polly, not wanting to hurt his pride.
Well, it seems like you have it tough too, so I guess you were hoping for a bit more from my salary. Sorry for not meeting your expectations.
That's right.
I work for a small company, and my salary is really low, so I wanted to marry a professional woman to achieve financial stability.
I only meant to cheer him up with what I didn't even believe myself, but I never thought Polly would take it seriously. Before we got married, he was happy that my work hours were regular, but after we got married, he complained about my low income as if he had changed his stance. What kind of world does a man live in where he expects his wife's income to be higher than his? I was just dumbfounded by Polly's unreliable behavior. As soon as he knew about my income, Polly started looking down on me. Yet, he wouldn't hesitate to buy whatever he wanted without restraint. Even when I asked him to be a bit more frugal, he wouldn't listen at all.
I've been spoiled by my parents since I was a kid, buying me whatever I wanted, so I can't change my attitude towards money that easily.
I couldn't say anything back to such a spoiled statement from Polly. It's no excuse to say that he was spoiled by his parents when he was a child at his age. The following year after we got married, we were blessed with a boy. I hoped that becoming a parent would change Polly, but his habit of spending recklessly didn't improve, even during childcare. It was always the same with him spending his entire salary. If it wasn't enough, he'd sneak money from my wallet without me noticing. While I was struggling to manage work and budgeting while raising our son, Cedric, Polly hardly contributed to childcare. As time passed, struggling through these tough days, Cedric is now preparing for his college entrance exams this year. Thanks to my careful budgeting, it looks like we can afford to send him to college. Cedric, understanding our financial situation, has been studying hard to enter a national university. Yet, Polly came up with a ridiculous idea. Because I bought a new car last year, the loan repayments are tough. Plus, there's Cedric's exams, right? So, I've decided to sell my parents' house and have them move in with us.
Wait, what are you saying? Suddenly living together like that, it's going to be a problem.
Why?
Risa, you get along with my parents, right? If we live together, we'll get their pension and become wealthier.
Indeed, I don't hate the idea of living with my in-laws. It's just that I didn't like Polly's way of making decisions on his own. In terms of finances, we've been managing well so far, so there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't indulge in luxuries.
Why do you always decide everything selfishly? Even the new car, you bought it without consulting me. That's my car, so I don't need to consult you every time.
Seeing Polly's selfish behavior, this time, Cedric got furious.
Dad, enough is enough. When I go to college, I might come home late from part-time jobs or clubs. If grandparents Arnold and Rothy are living with us, it's going to be awkward, right? Why don't you discuss these things properly with Mom?
Cedric, coming out of his room all of a sudden and raising his voice, left Polly wide-eyed in surprise. But the next moment, Polly turned to me, lashing out as if he was taking it out on me.
Cedric talking back to me, his dad, like that is because of your poor parenting. Reflect on it.
Saying that, Polly locked himself in his room and didn't come out for a while. I was happy that Cedric stood up for me. However, I was worried that the current home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Cedric successfully passed his first-choice national university. But tired of living with Polly, Cedric decided to move out and start living on his own. He said he wants to try his best on his own without relying on his parents, even if it means working part-time. Even so, Polly continues to ignore both me and Cedric. Ever since it's been just Polly and me at home, we don't even talk though we're in the same house. It feels suffocating. During these days, feeling mentally drained, I called my dad Mike in France to seek advice. Mike, worried about me, suggested I come to France for a while. I thought I couldn't take a long break because of my job, but it seems my colleagues were worried about my pale complexion recently. After explaining the situation, I was allowed to take some time off. However, I wanted to keep my consultation with Mike a secret from Polly. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I was away for a while, Polly might cool down a bit. But heading to Mike's, an entirely unexpected situation unfolded. Starting with a call from Polly while I was in France.
Risa, I've moved my parents' stuff into our house while you were away. What? What do you mean?
What do you mean, what?
I've been saying, haven't I? That I'd live with my parents. More than that, Dad and Mom are angry with you. They said a wife who spoils their son like you is the worst.
No way. I couldn't believe what Polly was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the type to speak ill of me like that.
So, I've decided we'll live with my parents and me from now on. If you were here, it'd inconvenience my parents. After all, you're the strict wife who makes their son speak ill of them.
Polly must have badmouthed me to my in-laws. Maybe the part about them being angry with me was also a fabrication. Angry, I thought about shouting something back. But, to stay calm, I just said, "I'll call you back later," and hung up. Luckily, Mike was home, so I immediately shared the phone call's content with him. Mike, looking disgruntled, shook his head. Polly, really? Relying on his parents at his age.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand why I have to be the one kicked out.
After a long discussion, Mike came up with a suggestion that excited me. I thought this would teach Polly a lesson. First, I contacted someone by email, then called Polly's mobile phone.
Polly, talking over the phone won't cut it, so let's discuss this when I get back from my trip.
I said this calmly, but Polly, with a laugh in his voice, replied, "You shouldn't come back." Just as Mike advised, Polly didn't want me to return home. Expecting this, I retorted easily,
"Okay, got it. I'll just move out on my own."
Huh? Polly sounded taken aback by my unexpected response. But thinking I was just bluffing, he laughed and replied, "Move out? Where to, when you have nowhere to go?" "Oh, to the place I'm currently at."
"What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends. Wait, you're not with a man, are you?"
Now he seemed to misunderstand that I was with a lover, so I decided to reveal the truth. "Well, if it's a man, it's indeed a man. But, you know, it's Dad."
Mike's place."
Polly sounded relieved. But he'd be surprised by the next part of the conversation. "Dad's living in a mansion in France now, so I've decided to live here too. That's why we're going to sell the house we've been living in."
"What? What do you mean?"
"Well, you should know, right? That house is in Dad's name, built for us." If I'm not living there, it's to be sold.
What? But Dad and Mom are here right now. What are you going to do?
That's what I said. It's no use talking over the phone. Polly, finally grasping the situation, hung up without saying anything else. He can't possibly imagine the further tragedy waiting for him upon my return to America. A week later, I returned home with Mike, where Polly was living with my in-laws. At the entrance, my in-laws greeted us with smiles. "Mike, it's been a long time."
Yes, I can't often return to America due to work. Risa has always been under your care.
While Mike and my father-in-law Arnold were exchanging greetings, Polly quietly emerged. It seemed he hadn't yet informed them about the house sale. Looking awkward, Polly just bowed his head.
Polly, the movers are coming today to pick up the stuff. Have you prepared everything?
All your stuff is already packed.
Oh, it's not just my things that are being moved out.
Huh? Do I have to move my things out today, too?
Polly's surprised shout caught Arnold's attention.
What's going on, Polly? Why are your things being moved out?
Polly, looking guilty, hesitantly explained the situation. Arnold became furious and started yelling at Polly.
You said this house was bought under your name with a loan so we could live together. Making your parents ashamed, unforgivable.
Arnold's thunderous voice left Polly speechless. Then, the moving truck arrived. After my things were moved out, my mother-in-law Rothy came out to direct the movers.
Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is prepared here, please take it.
Rothy had neatly prepared all the household items, including Polly's. Seeing this, Polly was dumbfounded.
Mom? What's happening? Why are you packing Dad's stuff too? Where are you planning to take it?
Watching Polly panic and question Rothy, we all burst into laughter.
You've been completely fooled. What? What's going on? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden?
Indeed, this was all a plan to trick Polly, discussed in advance by everyone here. The first person I contacted by email from France was Rothy. Rothy had been worried about my tired appearance for some time. After repeatedly asking why, I ended up telling Rothy everything about Polly. Rothy was shocked, especially at the part where Polly blamed his extravagant habits on his parents spoiling him. Rothy tearfully apologized for her parenting in front of me, which made me feel guilty. But Polly's wasteful spending wasn't Rothy's fault. As I comforted Rothy, our bond deepened. For me, without a mom, Rothy became someone I could consult about anything. Mike was aware of my close relationship with Rothy. Thus, he suggested involving the in-laws in our plan. Rothy, without letting Polly know, had been looking for a new place for them to live with Arnold. Arnold's scolding of Polly was all an act. I nearly burst out laughing at their convincing performance.
Rothy, thank you for arranging the movers for me as well. Now, I can move to the house Dad built in France.
I'm sorry, Risa.
My son has caused you so much trouble.
Rothy, we agreed not to say that, didn't we? Rothy and I laughed together. Polly, unaware of how close I was with his parents, looked surprised. Mom, where are we moving to?
We've already sold our family home.
We've already arranged a new place for us. Polly seemed relieved at Rothy's words. But that relief would soon be short-lived.
So, it was like that. I worried for nothing. Then I'll just go there too, right?
What are you talking about?
That's a senior living apartment for Arnold to live in with someone else.
Polly, you're not a child anymore. Find your own place to live. As soon as Rothy said this, Polly's face turned pale.
That's impossible. I don't even have the money for moving, let alone find a new place.
Indeed, Polly had squandered his salary on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. No matter how he struggled now, it was his own responsibility. Desperate, Polly looked at me with pleading eyes. I could guess what he was about to say.
By the way, Mike built quite a big house in France, right? I had no idea you were such a well-off lady. Listen, I'll do anything you say from now on, so could you take me with you to that house?
Suddenly speaking in a sweet tone, he was indeed trying to rely on me. I had no intention of indulging such naive thoughts and firmly stated my position.
I've been fooled by your kind words on occasion, but I can't forgive you anymore. You've barely contributed to our living expenses and have just been playing around. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I've already discussed this with Cedric on the phone yesterday, and we've decided to get a divorce. Cedric agrees it's for the best.
I vented the feelings I had been holding back, feeling a sense of relief. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding deeply.
What am I supposed to do now?
Polly cried, tears in his eyes, but my decision was firm. I presented him with the divorce papers and demanded his signature. Yet, Polly stubbornly refused to sign. Seeing this, Arnold showed his anger again.
Polly, enough is enough. After all the trouble you've caused Risa, now you're thinking of relying on her parents' home. I'm ashamed to call you my son.
That's right. I admit, I've spoiled you too much. But Polly, you're an adult now. Stop being so selfish and start living on your own. Convinced by his parents' earnest persuasion, Polly shed tears.
What? Even Dad and Mom? Do I have no allies here?
Muttering so, Polly signed the divorce papers. He then arranged to store his belongings in a storage unit and left the house alone. Betrayed by the parents he thought were on his side, he was visibly shocked. However, the in-laws had decided to cut ties with Polly. Not just them. I also promised never to let Polly see Cedric again. This was a strong request from Cedric. He had always resented Polly for never acting like a father. With the divorce as an opportunity, Cedric wanted to sever ties with Polly. I thought it was for the best for Cedric. Rejected by his parents and disowned by his son, Polly must have lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Polly spent some time living in monthly rental hotels and internet cafes. But once he received his salary, he managed to move into an apartment where he could live alone. During the divorce, I gave Polly a small amount of money as part of our shared assets. It was practically nothing, but I wanted to avoid any future claims for money, given my financial situation. In essence, it was severance pay. However, once Polly had a bit of financial leeway, he started getting into partying. Why do I know this? Because Polly contacted me, saying,
I'll find a woman with a good income and make you regret leaving me.
Initially, after becoming alone, Polly would contact me just to express his loneliness. But once he had money, his attitude became arrogant again. After some time, the communications from Polly suddenly stopped. I wondered if he had found a new girlfriend, but it turned out the situation was far more serious. According to the former in-laws, Polly had fallen for a nurse he met at a party. Despite not being reciprocated, Polly persistently pursued her. At worst, he even showed up at her apartment. As a result of his relentless stalking, he was reported and arrested in the act. The former in-laws, having intended to sever parental ties, were troubled by their son's scandal, feeling deeply sorry for them. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you try to distance yourself, you're still responsible when something happens. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Polly seemed unrepentant. During the interrogation,
It was true love.
He kept insisting. This led to a judgment that he was not remorseful, and his release was delayed. Such a man is better off cooling his head in prison for a while. After all, a penniless man in his 50s chasing such ideals will only cause annoyance. Now, I live elegantly in a mansion in France with Mike. Still not accustomed to the environment and not fluent in French, I'm not working yet. However, I can't stay unemployed forever, so I'm attending French lessons. Once I'm proficient in the language, I plan to help out with Mike's company. As time passed, Cedric graduated from university. He then moved here to work at Mike's company. In fact, Mike had called him over with the intention of making Cedric his successor. It was lonely being apart from Cedric for 4 years, but now we can live together forever. This thought fills me with joy. Now that I've become quite fluent in French, I assist with Mike's company and work as a cooking class instructor locally. Though my marriage failed, my life in France is very fulfilling. Despite being in my mid-40s, this is an ideal environment to enjoy life. I've decided to forget my past self, who worried about being plain and unpopular, and live positively. After all, there's still so much more to come. Surely, Mom in heaven is watching over me.
The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave.
Carol, the president's daughter who became the head of the design department, said, "I've been with this company for 40 years and have designed 90% of our flagship products, but she seems unaware of that. So, I decided to take action. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving," I said, and then wiped all my PC data and resigned. As a result, Carol faced an unexpected turn of events. I'm Victoria Simmons, 62 years old. I work in the design department of a stationery manufacturer. I've been here since I was a fresh graduate, for 40 years, and I'm still active even after retirement age. I strive not to be outdone by the younger ones. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and my daughter lives alone. It's hard to say this about myself, but I've designed 90% of the company's flagship products. Therefore, I believe I hold significant value to the company. Stationery is wonderful. It's about dreams. Designing for writing, drawing, painting, erasing, measuring, making each task functional and enjoyable. These designs cater to everyone, from school children to professionals. How long I can continue, no one knows. But since I love my job, I joke with the younger employees that I'll keep going until I can no longer stand. One morning, the President Kennedy, who I joined the company with, showed up at a meeting. It had been a while since he attended. He brought a woman with him. "Good morning, everyone. It's been half a year since I last saw all of you, hasn't it? Victoria, you're looking well." Kennedy and I joined the company in the same year. He used to be in sales, and we often talked at internal product presentations. Unlike the typical arrogant son of a president, he's sincere and humble. It's been 10 years since he took over from the previous president. Today, I've brought the replacement for the department head who recently left. Kennedy encouraged the woman beside him to greet everyone. She stepped forward and greeted. "Hello, I'm Carol Kennedy. I look forward to dedicating myself to the future growth of our company. Please, let's work well together." Everyone in the department was surprised. No one had expected the president's daughter to be appointed as the head of the department. As you all may know, our company is planning to expand overseas starting this year. We sent Carol to study abroad for a long time for this reason. She will help us create designs that are globally competitive. Let's all unite in this effort. After saying so, Kennedy left in good spirits. Wilson, one of the colleagues, approached me.
"Victoria, what do you think about her? Carol, I mean. I've known Carol since she was a child. We've never spoken, but the president used to bring her to company recreation events. Haven't seen her in a long time, but she's grown into a fine young lady. I think the president wants to make use of her international experience. But whether she understands the design industry is another question. So, we'll see how she does, huh?"
I could sense a hint of disdain for Carol in Wilson's expression.
Wilson, we just need to focus on our responsibilities.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. However, as it turned out later, Wilson's intuition was spot on. A month had passed since Carol took charge. We continued as usual, brainstorming new ideas for stationery and designing in front of our computers.
Everyone, I have something to say. Is that okay?
Carol said so and walked to the center of the room. She then started speaking.
We will start developing products for the international market next month, starting with UK. If things go well, we will establish a base in London and then expand to hub offices in various locations.
Wilson's eyes widened.
So, as a start, we will develop new products. The ideas and designs will be decided through an internal competition.
The strategy was to sell some of our existing products while simultaneously developing new ones. The release of the new products, both domestically and internationally. It was set for 6 months later. I had a question. Carol, is there a specific concept for the product development? Her face, which had been amiable until then, hardened.
The fact that I didn't mention a concept means it's the same as before. Simmons, you're our most veteran employee, right? I didn't expect such a basic question from someone like you.
I was taken aback by her unexpected response.
If I had to say, I don't want anything outdated.
With a composed face, Carol finished speaking and returned to her desk. The internal competition was held weekly. I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if, like Hollywood movies, American origin stationery could become popular worldwide? I kept searching for new product ideas. What's different from my younger days is that the number of ideas that come to mind decreases with age. However, the quality of each idea has certainly improved. So, I wasn't worried even if I didn't come up with ideas every week. But Carol seemed not to tolerate that.
In this past month, everyone has worked hard. We've had over 200 ideas, with Wilson contributing 20%. It's not just about quantity, especially since we don't know what the market expects. We need as many ideas as possible.
She was clearly speaking with me in mind. Unfazed, I gave Wilson, who was modestly giving a thumbs up, a secret wink.
Well, it can't be helped if nothing comes up. But, as professionals, is it acceptable? Only 5 ideas in a month might indicate you've run out of ideas after being in the business for so long. I don't understand that world, but it doesn't seem like you're trying.
She looked straight at me, without averting her eyes even once. After the meeting, Wilson came to me.
Thanks to you, Victoria. Your way of expanding associations was amazing. Ideas just keep coming. But Carol is too blatant. It's really annoying. It's okay. It's true that not many ideas are coming out.
But, has she seen your ideas? Just talking numbers here. 1 of yours equals 10 of ours. Does she understand that?
That's all right. Maybe the British won't like my ideas. The final judgment is by the users.
Another month passed. We narrowed down our ideas and designed about 50 specific products from them. None of my ideas were selected, but about 5 of my designs were nominated. Carol seemed displeased by that.
Today, a buyer from UK, Mr. Lee, will visit us. He's agreed to take over our agency there. We hope to decide today, but at least we want to narrow it down to about 5. Especially the younger ones, look forward to it.
In the afternoon, Lee arrived and headed to the conference room with Carol. They returned after about 3 hours.
Congratulations, Wilson. I think it will be one of your 3 designs.
Carol spoke to Wilson with a big smile. He looked surprised. Later, I heard that everyone thought one of my designs would be chosen. Thank you. But, are you sure? Shouldn't it be Victoria's?
That's fine. Mr. Lee liked it, and so did I.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Indeed, we can't match the sensibilities of the younger generation. Simmons, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is.
Carol said that with a spiteful look. That might be true. I have no hard feelings about Wilson being chosen. In fact, I'm genuinely happy for him. It's wonderful when my colleague makes their mark in the world. I spoke from the heart. Then, Carol's face flushed with anger.
That's so irritating. What's with this saintly act of yours? You can only come up with 4 or 5 ideas a month and still act so high and mighty. Do you think everyone respects you just because you've been here the longest?
Her words were unexpected. I never thought she saw me that way, but at the same time, my anger was ignited.
Excuse me, but how much do you actually know about design? Do you remember the process of selecting everyone's ideas and designs? None of the works you favored are left in the final selection. You lack a professional's eye. You don't understand our struggle.
At that point, she lost her composure.
Oh dear. To think you'd say such things to me. I'm a manager, you know?
She approached me. Her eyes bloodshot.
You're done here as of today. The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave.
I was surprised by her sudden change, but I felt no resistance to her command to leave. Though I thought her remark about being an older lady was uncalled for.
I understand. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. But I'm worried about what happens next. What are you talking about? Worrying about what happens after you leave? Don't pretend to care. The department will rejuvenate, and the young energy will keep coming. It's all good.
She laughed triumphantly, looking as if her anger had subsided.
I'm relieved to hear that. I'll start right away,
I said emotionlessly and began clearing my belongings. There was nothing particularly important to keep or hand over, so I discarded almost everything. I saved my designs on my memory stick, wiped the PC data, yes, erased everything. I also cleared the shared memory on the intranet.
Hey, Simmons, don't forget to submit your resignation. It's the rule.
Of course. After saying that, I immediately wrote my resignation letter and handed it to her. She remarked,
"Wow, that was quick,"
and took it with a refreshing smile. I tried to appear relieved, but I couldn't tell how she perceived it. Then, until the end of the day, I went around bidding farewell to my colleagues. That night, they hastily organized a farewell party for me. Surprisingly, it turned into a chorus of criticism and complaints about Carol. I became increasingly worried about the future of the design department. The next morning, I woke up to bright sunlight. It seemed I had gotten drunk last night, for the first time in many years, so much so that I couldn't remember when last I had felt this way. I had forgotten to close the curtains on the east-facing window and slept through. Suffering from a rare hangover, I groaned while heading to the kitchen. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and gulped it down. Then, I sat on the living room sofa, feeling blank. My mind was empty, but that was a sensation I hadn't felt since my student days, which strangely made me a bit happy. However, old habits die hard. Despite not feeling hungry, I thought I should make breakfast.
Take it easy, you have all the time now.
I said to myself and chuckled. Then I thought of calling my daughter and visiting her.
Right, I should do what I've always wanted to do.
I muttered. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was Kennedy. Good morning, Mr. Kennedy. What's the matter? Calling so early.
It's not about what's the matter, Victoria. I tried calling you last night too. Never mind that. Could you come to the office, please?
But I resigned as of yesterday.
Just come, please. This is an order. I'll be in my office.
All right. An order, that's not something one says to someone who has resigned. Yet, I thought, if he's insisting so much, it must be something urgent. I soothed my aching head with hot coffee, gulping it down as it cooled. Then, I called a taxi and headed to the office. Excuse me. I knocked and entered the president's office. Good morning.
Sorry for calling you in so early.
Kennedy wanted to hear about what happened yesterday. I explained everything, careful not to exaggerate my words or reactions.
I see. I am very sorry about that.
He expressed his deep apology.
The mess my foolish daughter made is my responsibility as her father. It seems I made mistakes in raising her. Victoria, would you consider withdrawing your resignation? We started here together, after all. Please.
I had harbored no negative feelings towards him, only gratitude for employing me for a long time. But his words caught me off guard. President Kennedy, it's not fair using our shared past like that.
So, will you?
All right. I'm counting on you.
Morning.
Saying that, he entered the design department office. I was told to wait in the hallway until called. The door was left open, so I could hear the conversation inside.
Dad, what are you doing here? Did we have a plan? Do not call me Dad here.
His uncharacteristically stern tone seemed to surprise Carol.
I have a question for you, Carol. What is it?
The two began to speak in a formal tone.
Why did Victoria resign?
Oh, as per her resignation letter. Personal reasons.
Don't lie.
Kennedy glared at Carol as he spoke in a low voice.
It's not a lie. She left because of her age.
The surrounding staff were all left speechless.
Don't lie. I've heard everything about what happened.
In that instant, Carol glanced sharply at the employees.
Someone spilled the beans.
And muttered under her breath. Suddenly, Kennedy raised his voice.
Don't make a fool of me.
Carol stood up, startled, her eyes wide open.
Victoria.
I was called and immediately entered the room. Carol's eyes were so wide open, it seemed they might fall out.
Carol, I heard it from Victoria. You don't seem to understand what you did.
She seemed to have calmed down a bit. Even so, she took a deep breath before proceeding. How do I know if her story is true?
Fool!
Carol collapsed to the floor.
Who do you think you are? Don't underestimate the real world. Listen, you don't understand Victoria's value to our company at all.
The conversation had turned into one between parent and child.
It's not just about how long she has worked,
Carol said defiantly. Kennedy was completely exasperated.
How dare you? Victoria has been faithfully serving for 40 years, designing 90% of our flagship products. She's the backbone of our company. Without her, the design department would fall apart. She's irreplaceable. You, on the other hand, are easily replaceable. Understand?
Carol was at a loss for words, but she bit her lip and glared at Kennedy.
Then you should have told me that. How am I supposed to know if no one tells me?
She spoke like a petulant child, and laughter could be heard from the staff. Carol glared at them. Seeing that, Kennedy turned towards the staff.
Everyone, I am truly sorry. This incident is my responsibility as her father. That's right, I never wanted to be in this department in the first place. Dad is to blame.
I thought my blood vessels might burst.
You are unbelievably hopeless.
Kennedy and Carol both looked surprised, caught off guard. I had made up my mind. Carol, let me be clear. You are not cut out for a managerial role. In fact, you have a fatal flaw as a professional. Your conversation with President Kennedy just now proves it. You may have forgotten, but you called me an older lady. And as I've said before, your judgment in design is non-existent. It's hopeless. Carol was still in shock. I've changed my mind and decided to come back to work, for the sake of the president and the design department. I've chosen to cherish my passion. I then said to Kennedy, I'm sorry for my outburst. He shook his head and replied,
Not at all. Thank you.
Carol was biting her lip in frustration again, this time looking down. Then, a phone call came. It was for Carol, but after a moment of hesitation, Kennedy answered it. The caller was Lee. Kennedy listened, nodding and showing surprise at times, and eventually said,
That's fine. I apologize for the inconvenience. We look forward to continued cooperation.
He hung up. It was about the selection of the design. Lee said that although my design was his top choice, he reluctantly went with Wilson's due to Carol's strong insistence and persuasion. He found it hard to discard my design and thus reached out. It seemed that Carol had come to terms with the situation. She finally seemed to surrender. She dropped like a wilting sunflower. After Lee's call, Kennedy laid out the conditions to Carol in front of the staff.
You will decide your own future. If you want to work in our company, start from the new employee training. Otherwise, you'll be assigned to one of our client companies.
Greatly humbled, Carol replied in a faint voice, "Yes." After the two left, all the staff gathered around me, expressing their joy. Although it was the unfortunate outcome for Wilson. "See, I told you. This is for the best," he said with a smile. Indeed, it seemed like things turned out just as he and everyone else had initially felt about Carol. That experience reminded me of how important intuition is for a designer. Subsequently, our market expansion into the UK went well. This time, we targeted teenagers. We found that the sensibilities of American and British teenagers are quite similar. While I don't think it applies to all age groups, it was a revelation. Considering the global use of social media, it's clear that sharing of sensibilities is happening faster than imagined. So, I believe that designs aimed at American consumers could also sell well. At my age, I never thought I'd be doing work with such a worldwide impact. I'm more motivated than ever. Visiting my daughter will have to wait. I guess it'll be another video call tonight.